Welcome to Hedgehog Watchdog. I'm Devin Saxon, joined by Greg Baldwin. We're the meme team behind Libertarian Party South Dakota. South Dakota's against prohibition. Today's episode is brought to you by Pinkcoin. You can check them out at pinkcoin.com. Our guest today is the Secretary of the National Libertarian Party, also our keynote speaker at the 2021 Libertarian State Convention in South Dakota this Saturday. Caryn and Harlos, welcome.
Welcome.
It's good to have you on.
Thank you so much for inviting me. This is one show I haven't been on, and I'm, I'll go. I don't know what terminology I'm allowed to use, so let's just say I'm very promiscuous when it comes to shows inviting me. I'm like, okay, I'll go.
We've only been doing this this is our 14th episode,
16th.
Oopsies, I'm behind, but yeah, 16th. But we only do one episode a week, so.
Well, you made it past I think it's about the 10 episode mark where if people are just going to drop out, they do. So you've made it past that first milestone. I podcasted for years way back in the day, so I know what it's like.
Yeah, you do a couple, don't you?
Well, now I just do a YouTube channel, which gets released on some things as audio only. But way before as a libertarian, I did a theological podcast that was actually pretty popular, and I ended up getting a book out of it, and so that was fun.
Nice.
Can you still dig those up online, or?
I don't know. I always put things out under a Creative Commons, so I know a bunch of people rebroadcast it, and I never required permission, so it is out there. And the book that came out of it is actually used as a textbook at Liberty University.
So it can kind of be like Spike Cohen's mixtape, and we can be for...
I'm sure they're all over YouTube. I'm positive they are, so I'm sure. I still have people referencing it, like old friends of mine who find me. It turns out they're libertarians now too, and I'm like, whoa, what a small world.
So my first question: South Dakota is exploding right now on registrations for the Libertarian Party. So for those who have just joined the party or are unfamiliar with you, could you tell us your story and how you first got involved with the Libertarian Party, and what you were up to before being elected as the LNC secretary?
Wow, certainly. And you guys have partisan registration?
Yeah.
Oh, awesome. Mm-hmm. I freaked out when I learned some states don't. You know how you assume everywhere is like where you're from? And then when I learned, I'm like, what are you talking about? That's so weird. And the people who don't have it, like, no, you guys are the weird ones. Why are you asking permission of the state? Yeah, I've been a libertarian since September 17th, 2014. Yes, I do know the exact day. And it's the day that Ann Coulter wrote her column saying anyone who voted for a libertarian for that particular Senate race, she would come and drown. And I remain undrowned, so her threats are useless. And how I became a libertarian, I didn't know any libertarians. I didn't read any libertarian books. I wasn't even political. I didn't vote. I still hate politics, but I didn't get involved at all. And I was on Facebook in a debate, as we do. But at that time, it was with some evangelical Christians. That was the community I was involved in. If you think libertarians have infighting, no, they don't. There's no fighting like church fighting. None like church fighting. So these alleged, and I say alleged because I do question the Christianity of anyone who would take joy in this. We're gloating over the fact that some cities were installing spikes under overpasses to keep homeless people from sleeping there. And I was just appalled, absolutely appalled. So I started arguing with them. And at that time, again, fundamentalist Christian, what I used to be involved in, everyone was, if you were Christian, you were Republican. That just came with the territory. You said the sinner's prayer and you changed your voter registration. Exactly like that. And in fact, I was a Democrat when I became a Christian. So I was like, no, that's awful. And what they did is they pulled out, the heavy artillery and called me a liberal, which in that circle, you might as well be called a Satanist, that would be slightly higher up in the reputation level. So in order to get out of that as quickly as possible, I just spouted out, no, I think I'm more of a libertarian because it's a word I heard. I thought I kind of knew what it meant and I liked the way it sounded. But after that conversation, I realized I didn't really know what it meant. And the last time I spouted out a word I didn't know what it meant, it turned out to be pornographic, literally, in a very, very bad way that I'm still embarrassed of to this day. And I had that going through my head going, oh my God. So I said, I better find out what this word means, because I didn't think that other one was pornographic either. So I looked it up. I went, the first thing that came up was lp.org. I went to the platform, started reading it. I got through the preamble and the statement of principles and stopped, opened a new browser tab, and changed my voter registration to Libertarian on the spot. That's my conversion story. I never met a Libertarian at that point. Thank God. It was a good few months before I actually met a Libertarian. So I couldn't be scared away quite so easily. And but how I got even more involved, that would have been it. If at that point, that would have been it. I wasn't interested in voting. I just liked the philosophy. But then I got I was watching some Facebook ads, on the national page. And they had this reward program. If you became a national member, they would send you a free T-shirt.
Yeah.
I wanted that shirt, man. I was like, oh, that's a sweet shirt. I wanted that damn shirt. That long sleeve black one that just said Libertarian.
I got that one, actually.
Yeah, because I just moved to Colorado and I didn't have many long sleeve T-shirts. And I'm like, damn it. So I joined the party. And the National Party, just to get the T-shirt.
Yeah.
Okay. And they called me and asked why you joined. And I said, I wanted the shirt. I told them honestly. But really, that T-shirt was the end of me. From that point on, then I got sucked in because I started getting the emails and the invitations. And oh my God, my poor husband. So yeah, that's my story. And so soon after I got involved with the Libertarian Party of Colorado, and you know how it is, you go to a Libertarian meeting, you leave with a title, but I didn't allow to do that.
That's true. That's 100% true.
It is. But I refused, actually. I learned my lesson from the church that you don't make the new convert the pastor. So I told them, see if I'm still here in a year, and then I'll think about a board position. But up until then, just let me volunteer. No title, no fancy pants. And after a year, I did get on the board. But I think that's a good rule of thumb in any organization. Give people a year. They don't know what they think yet. And you're not doing them or yourself any favors. So after a year, then I became the communications director for the Libertarian Party of Colorado. Then I learned about the Oregon situation and the National Party, what happened there. And I was horrified by that. And I said, if National Party could do that to Oregon, they could do it to Colorado. I literally ran for the LNC to protect Colorado from the National Party. So I was Region 1 representative first, and then, liked it. And that's why I decided that my skill set was probably more suited for secretary. And I ran for secretary, did not think I would win, because Alicia Matson, who I was running against, is phenomenal. She's absolutely phenomenal. I'm still shocked to this day that I beat her. That was a very, very, very formidable opponent. And then I got reelected, but I love doing the secretary stuff. So that's it in a nutshell.
So what happened in Oregon? I'm not too familiar with that.
Yeah,
that was before my time, I think.
It's still going. Okay.
It's still going.
It started in 2011, I think. So now we're going on 10 years. They had a convention. I'm going to try to give you the short story because Oregon is very complicated. And I'm going to say right up front, I'm biased. I'm going to give you my view of it. Other people's views are different. So they had a convention and they messed up and they amended their bylaws in such a way that made it impossible for them ever to have another convention again, which is a good reason that you should not just amend your bylaws on the fly. You should have people who actually know what they're doing and know Roberts. But so they kept trying year after year to hold a convention. They couldn't. So two factional groups kind of arose that said, we need to follow the bylaws as best as we can, amend them, and continue from here. And they both kind of did that. So we had two competing groups claiming to be the LP of Oregon, but one of them got to the Secretary of State's office first. And I do believe they were the more legitimate one. and filed the paperwork, and that's who Oregon recognized. They then the other group who wasn't recognized cried foul, appealed to the National Party, and the National Party then took the side of the other group. And the problem there is the National Party does not have any authority to tell a state party who their officers are. If they thought the behavior of these multiple groups was so confusing or so torturous to their conscience, the only weapon the National Party has is disaffiliation and telling them sort it out. And then when you got one group, come back and we'll reaffiliate. In fact, that happened once in Arizona. We disaffiliated Arizona at one time. So for them to take a side is interfering in the autonomy of a state affiliate. It wasn't our business. It was Oregon's business. And in fact, a poll was taken of the Oregon Libertarians, and they favored the other group.
Yeah.
So nobody had hands here. They were all dirty dealing a little bit. But the fact is, it wasn't National's business. They should have just disaffiliated and let people in Oregon settle it, because we're not top down. And I certainly didn't want National coming into a Colorado dispute and telling us who our officers were. And Wes Wagner, God bless him, he was the chair of the group that made it to the Secretary of State's office first. And they got the memo from National saying, no, it's not you guys, it's the other guys. And that board literally passed a motion to send a response back to the LNC, and the response consisted only of an image of a flaming middle finger. So he he did this literally. It's in the record.
That's awesome.
Middle finger.
Well, the whole story kind of sounds similar to something.
Yeah, I was going to say that.
Constitution Party here.
Constitution Party in South Dakota, the exact same thing happened, where two people filed the Secretary of State claiming they were the Constitution Party, and the National Constitution Party got involved and picked sides. And then the Secretary of our state just basically was like, you know what, I don't know which Constitution Party is which. I'm just going to remove you from the ballot altogether. And they haven't been on the ballot since.
No, they lost. They lost their. It was like, they lost their ability to nominate candidates at convention, and then their ballot access was tied to how their candidates did that election. So they just totally shot themselves in the foot, and they haven't been able to get back on the ballot since. So luckily, nothing like that's happened with us.
It's still going on, though. I think nearly everybody accepts the group that actually has the name as the legitimate group, who are the heirs of Wes Wagner. It's been continuous, but the other faction, however small they are, just won't stop.
So is that like an Eastern and Western thing, or?
No, not at all. But here should tell you something. The guy who was the leader of the other faction was campaigning for Trump at some point. So I think the illegitimate group is in charge.
Yeah.
So it was ugly. It was ugly.
So you were a two-time platform committee chair, and I saw that you were selected for the National Platform Committee again.
Yes.
Are there any upcoming platform changes for the convention in Reno next year, or is that just starting?
It's just starting. It's weird. I didn't agree with the National Party selecting our platform appointees this early, because the states, I don't know if you know how it works, but 5 seats are chosen by the LNC, but it's a 20-person committee. The other 15 seats are chosen by certain states, and they have until, I think it's February of next year. So basically now you have these 5 LNC, and they always wait till the last minute, okay? They just wait. So you're going to have 5 LNC members twiddling their thumbs until February. And maybe some of the people who just got selected by the LNC, their life circumstances will change by then, and they might not be able to serve. To me, we should have selected them in November or December like we've always done. But we didn't. And okay, that's fine. I hope it works out. But you got these people are going to be all excited. And then when they learn that they're not going to be able to do anything till February, it's going to be kind of a bummer. And even though I was chair twice last year, none of our proposals got heard in 2020 convention. So I will be running for platform committee chair again, only because I feel like I got robbed. after 2 times in a row, like actually 2 times in a row, I wouldn't run again. But the last convention don't count as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, we think we wasted a whole day on like one issue.
We did, and that's the LNC's fault.
Yeah.
I told him, and listen, Alex was afterwards and said, "You were right." I said, "Okay."
So you do a lot of work in preserving the history of the Libertarian Party. How exactly was the Libertarian Party founded, and what are some key moments in the Libertarian Party's history so far?
Certainly, but if you know me, I'm gonna just say what I want anyway.
Yeah, you're fine. You can.
Yeah, I'd like to just give a little background on how that happened.
Okay.
I was always very, very interested in the history, but I was Region 1 at the time, and the Montana Party was headed up by one guy for 20 years, and he died suddenly. And the party there found itself like, oh my God, where's our bank account? Where's our minutes? Where's our bylaws? They didn't have a convention in 20 years. He just kind of, Mike Fellows, he was a great, I mean, he kept that party together, but very much by the seat of their pants, very informal. So, but they almost fell apart and had an Oregon situation. So I was trying to help them find their bylaws. So when I was going to national, I was going to poke around in their filing cabinets to see if I can find the last filed copy of their bylaws. So me and Susan Hogarth went there, and they showed us the filing cabinets, and we saw all these old LP news and got really excited. And then Wes Wagner says to me, "Would you like to see the storage facility?" And I was like, storage facility? I don't think anyone knows we even have a storage facility. I heard all of our records got wiped out in a flood at the Watergate. We used to be at the Watergate building, which is just so deliciously ironic. And he's like, no, not all of them got wiped out, though a good deal of them. So we went to this warehouse, and it was chock full of wonderful things that no one ever got to see. They weren't organized because it was just put in a warehouse. And from that moment on, I became determined that this is a waste of resources. These press releases could be recycled. They could be used by smaller parties for newsletters. Why reinvent the wheel on some issues like gun rights? The issues don't change. You just got to update them. So, yeah, and one thing led to another. And now I'm looking in my basement, and my poor husband, half of them are here. And the rest are in Parker, Colorado, where we're organizing them and archiving them for people who just love history for the sake of history, which is like me. I don't care if it's useful, but also for its utility. Because all of this stuff, volunteers put countless dollars and sweat equity into, and to have it just sitting in a box, it was silly because it's all valuable. And oftentimes we'll go, oh, somebody will think they have this bright idea. Let's try X. Well, it turns out we already tried X 10 years ago. And if you're going to try it, fine. Maybe there's a reason why it failed, but at least look at the metrics from then. So we're not repeating and throwing good money after bad. So it is very, very valuable as well. So that's how I got involved in it. Now, how did the party start? Well, I'm going to pimp my show just a little bit here.
Go for it.
I do a YouTube channel, Pink Flame of Liberty, and it's mostly party history, though I do veer off into some political commentary. But the meat and bones of it is party history. And what I'm doing is going through party history a month at a time, staying 50 years ahead. So, because we're in our 50th year anniversary. So I'm going through using LP News kind of as the framework. And each month we look back to the same month 50 years ago. So we're still in the very beginning of the party in the examination. So if anyone's really interested in getting really into our history, go listen to those shows, because we get into everything. The personalities is just wonderful. But it basically started from some disaffected Republicans who were really fed up with Nixon. In fact, at the meeting where they voted to form the committee to form a Libertarian Party was the day that Nixon did the announcement on TV of the price and wage controls, and that and the draft everything that was going on at that time, they just really hated Nixon, was the impetus for starting the Libertarian Party. So they officially formed December 10th, 1972. There's a big debate whether it was in Westminster or Colorado Springs. And actually, Westminster, I like how someone once, David Nolan said, nothing interesting must ever happen there because they battle for the title of being the birthplace. Colorado Springs could care less. And they actually erected a plaque in Westminster claiming they were the birthplace.
Nice.
So, yeah, it tells you how exciting Westminster is. And, so it was formed on that date. And
where's Westminster? We got to make a trip there. I guess that's the Libertarian pilgrimage now.
I did. I actually went to David's old house, and my friends are going, "You're stalking this poor man after his death." I went to the villa where the Libertarian Party was birthed. Westminster is just, I'm really bad with directions, north of Denver. Whereas Colorado Springs is about an hour south of Denver. And I'm in between them. I'm in Castle Rock. So I'm exactly in between Denver and Colorado Springs. So, yeah. I'm sorry?
Yeah.
I said good place to be.
Yeah. I love Denver, though. My husband doesn't like city life, but I think Denver is fascinating. I just love the architecture and stuff. I don't care for Colorado Springs so much. It's very much a military town. No offense to people from Colorado Springs. They got a great party there, though. The El Paso Libertarian Party is one of the best counties out there. But so that's when they were formed, and they ran a candidate the following I said December 10th, 72, December 10th, 71, sorry. And then they ran a candidate in 72 and got an electoral college vote. And contrary to popular opinion about Hillary Clinton, Tony Nathan was, in fact, the first woman to get an electoral college vote. And that was in 72, and that was the Libertarian Party candidate.
Nice.
And she was also, I believe, the first Jewish American to get an electoral college vote.
You think people were more receptive?
Arguably, Dr. Hospers was the first gay man to get an electoral college vote. But of course, a lot of people were closeted, so we don't know really what went on, but he was the first person that everyone knew was gay that got an electoral college vote. So you can say openly gay. So we set a lot of records at that time. I'm very proud of our accomplishments. So
we need to start getting credit for these.
I'm sorry.
I've got a few comments. Adam Jewell says, "I can't wait for convention. Can't wait to see you there, Adam." Roger Sanchez says, "Welcome to Free Speech Media, Caryn and Harlos."
Thank you, Roger. We are friends. I know Roger well.
What's the biggest obstacle facing the Libertarian Party today?
Libertarians. I'm not joking, but if you mean outside of ourselves.
How about that? Outside of ourselves, how about that?
the two-party machine, because whenever we get, and I could be more specific in a minute, but whenever we get any traction, because they're in power, they pass laws to make it more difficult. But to be more general, what's the biggest obstacles? I will name two. Ballot censorship, which of course is sponsored by the duopoly, and we need different voting systems, which is why I'm also very involved with the RCV movement, which is ranked choice voting. So on the policy committee for RCV Colorado. And I actually think the national LP should stop doing some of the things it's doing activism-wise and leave that to the states. And we should concentrate only on those two issues. Because without those two, we're never going to elect libertarians on a wide scale. So why spin our wheels? Why don't we go to the root of the problem, fix that, and then I think we have empowered our candidates. I'm not saying, there aren't other things we should do, but when it comes down to issues, I really think we need to throw everything we got at those two issues, because we're frustrating and burning out people, because people can only lose for so long. You get tired of that. And also, I think we need to stop the focus of we're only winners if candidates get elected, because there's David Nolan never had that attitude. The funny thing is, if you look at his case to form a Libertarian Party, he listed, I think it was 7 things. And one thing is noticeable on that list by its absence. Nowhere on that list was electing candidates even mentioned. At the end of the list, he put a PS. Oh, by the way, we might actually elect some Libertarians. And it's because he realized that it's rigged against third parties. And he felt we would win in other ways by influencing direction. So if we could get the major parties to start adopting some of our positions, that is a victory. And also, if we remember that third parties tend, and whatever anyone thinks of BLM, I'm not going to give an opinion on it, but one thing they should have shown us is that politics is a lagging indicator of social movements and social changes that have already taken. BLM moved the conversation in directions that politics never could have done on its own, and did it in a rapid time frame. If you told me 2 years ago the idea of abolishing the police would have been on politicians' tongues, I would have told you were crazy. That will never happen. And it happened because of BLM. If we would remember, as a third party, we are basically a social movement in the guise of a political party, because we need to get the changes going socially, then the political machine will follow suit. But concentrating and putting all of our hopes and dreams in electing candidates in this rigged system, we are setting ourselves up for disappointment. So I really think we need to concentrate more on where we can influence issues. One example would be the death penalty. It is ready to fall. If we would throw everything we have at that in the states that still have it, we could claim that as a big victory. And there are already groups that have a lot of resources we could pair up with. That's strategic, to pair up with groups that agree on certain issues, single issue coalitions. Same thing with marijuana legalization nationwide. That's ready to happen. Why don't we help push it over? There's a lot of issues we could do that with. So, yeah. And I see Dennis Pratt here saying, I need to come to PorcFest. I want to come to PorcFest. Unfortunately, coronavirus hit my family finances really hard, and I can't afford it. I know the PorcFest ticket itself is cheap, but flying from Colorado to New Hampshire is not. And I'm not affording my mortgage right now, just being absolutely honest. If somebody wanted to sponsor me to go to PorcFest, I would go and do whatever anyone wanted if they needed a speaker. But at one point in my life, I had a lot of disposable income and I used it very generously for the party. But right now, I just don't. Unfortunately, things change. I want to go.
I want to go too, but it's just so far away.
Yeah, I want to go badly. And I also want to go to Freedom Fest, but those tickets are not cheap. I could drive there. That's in South Dakota.
Yeah, I think it's outrageous that it's $500. Yeah, $400. Like, come on.
I don't. Well, we did just find out. We did just find out the LPSD got a locals discount of $100 off. So if you change your mind, reach out to us and we can get you $100 off to Freedom.
Well, I'll talk to my husband because we ended up not being able to go to the Frontier Summit because of the blizzard, which didn't hit until today. Yeah. So they could have had it.
Well, that's got to end because it cannot ruin our convention next week. So hopefully that weather does not continue. We had bad luck.
Those of you who want me at PorcFest, get me there and I'll be there. You don't have to ask me twice, but yeah, it's a bad year for me. And my husband's a realtor and the real estate market just suffered. Bad. I didn't lose my job, but it's the second income that got hit.
Yeah. Adam Jules says, Caryn, in your opinion, what's the best way for libertarians to recruit the most diehard Democrats or Republicans?
Well, if they're diehard, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't really try to focus on those.
I don't think you can. I mean, if you said diehard conservatives or progressives, that'd be different. But you already identified them as partisans, and if they're have their eggs in that basket, I don't think we can. And I actually don't think that's where we should be focusing our efforts. I think we need to be focusing our efforts at the disaffected. because those are the people who are willing to throw in their fate with a third party. I'm not saying we should ignore anyone else, but if we're going to get the most bang for our buck, I think it's the disaffecteds. But the best way I have found to recruit people to the Libertarian Party is not to recruit them, is to simply by being consistently libertarian. People know when they're being sold something, that you view them as a prospect. I've gotten more people into the party by never asking them to come to the party. Like just being myself on Facebook, most of my friend circle who weren't libertarians all became libertarians, and I never once asked them to, never once pressured them to, but they saw an authentically lived out philosophy and it attracted them. And part of our problem as a party, I think, is we're very self-conscious about how we might look to others and not worried about just being genuinely libertarian. And I think if we did that, people they would come to us. We wouldn't need to be begging them to come to us. And that has worked in my life. And I always draw on religious analogies. Some people don't like it. Too bad, so sad. When I was in fundamentalist Christianity, I was involved in a movement called Evangelism Explosion. And what they taught was friendship evangelism. You just be in people's lives and live an authentic Christian life, and people are attractive to authenticity. And I think that goes for everything in life, not just religion and any kind of philosophy. You know, if you have a good philosophy, lifestyle, and worldview, and you live it authentically, people will be attracted to it. And if we just did that rather than trying to pander, you know, we think pandering helps, but people know when they're being pandered to, and they don't like it. It's patronizing.
Yeah. Daryl Root, the treasurer for State Party, says most people identify as independents. Those are the ones we need to chase.
Yeah, and there's a way. One reason why I was curious if you guys had partisan registration, because this doesn't work in states that they don't. But when I'm out doing outreach booths, because I used to do a ton of that, and it was a natural fit for me because, again, being involved in Evangelism Explosion, I'm used to that kind of just walking up to people and, you know, introducing ideas. But I get a lot of people who say, yeah, no, I think you guys are great, but I'm independent. And I say, well, you made a good first step, and that's great. You opted out of the duopoly. But here's the problem. The only thing that politicians respond to is numbers. And when you opt out as an independent, the only message you are telling them is that you're not happy with either of them. But you don't give them any data as to which direction you're unhappy with. For all they know, you might want more communism because independence says nothing. I go, if you register as a libertarian, you've now given them a data point as to how you're unhappy. You want more freedom, and you could still vote for whoever you want to. But if you're trying to send a message, an independent sends a very, very unclear message. And I've gotten a lot of people to agree and register libertarian on that basis because they're aghast at thinking, you know, you're right. The Democrats use that number. And in fact, the ultra progressives do use those numbers to say that people are leaving the Democrat Party because they're not left enough. And unless they're joining some other party to send a message, how do you know? You can spin the independent data any way you want. Those numbers are way too flexible. So in states that have partisan registration and you have people who are sympathetic but like really burnt out on identifying with a party, that argument usually does help, especially when you emphasize that you can still vote for whoever you want to. Now, you're still going to have to overcome the primary objection. Some people find it really important to vote in the primaries. And in most states, you have to be registered, whatever. And I tell those people, well, if you want to vote in the Republican primary, whatever it was, change your registration, then change it back. You know, me, I don't care. And I will, if they're willing, give them the argument as to why primaries shouldn't even exist. But some people don't want to hear that. And it's a shame because in Colorado, we didn't used to have primaries. We were a caucus state. and that just got changed, and that sucks.
Yeah, in South Dakota, because it's like a 90% Republican legislature, pretty much races are won in the primary. We had like 20 seats go unopposed for the legislator this year, where literally a Republican just got his name on the ballot and got to, get elected. And, that's a lot of it. They might have had a primary challenger, but they
I
didn't
think
have
we had like
anybody.
7 candidates that were in two-way races too, because nobody was challenging the Republican in their district, and they were the only ones that were stepping up.
Yeah. And, those are the races where you could get a surprise win, because let's say, God forbid, I'm not wishing bad on anybody, that you're running in a two-way race against a Republican, and the Republican candidate unexpectedly drops dead.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, sometimes things get handed to you.
I think in South Dakota,
I don't want that to happen to anybody, but it's life. We're all going to die, and some people are going to die while they're running for office. That's just the way it is. Or they're going to have some huge scandal. And I don't cry any tears about Republicans being in scandals. I don't want them to die, but couldn't happen to better people. So, and you could get in a very unlikely way. So don't ever let a race go unopposed. Ever let a race go unopposed. That's like a gift from heaven right there.
Yeah. What's the biggest strength of the Libertarian Party?
Our activists. Because you have to be a special kind of person, and I don't mean that in a sarcastic way, like, oh, you're special, aren't you? But it's a certain type of person that is willing to go to the stocks for a long shot. It's the same type of spirit that I think the founding fathers had, the revolutionaries had. They were in the extreme minority, and they were willing to literally be, at death's door, because signing the Declaration of Independence was signing your death warrant back then for an idea. And libertarians are of that same stock, I think. Mm-hmm. And that then is our greatest strength, because a dedicated group of people who realize they have nothing to lose change the world. Again, using my religious analogy, 12 disciples turned the ancient world upside down, because you had 12 people who really, really believed and were willing to, they also signed their death warrants. So that's how revolutionary movements are. It's always a small, dedicated group of people inspired by an idea. And that is our greatest strength.
We have the Notorious 9, don't we?
What? Oh, yeah. Well,
the Notorious 9?
Yeah, well, it's funny because it's actually 10, but I guess Aaron and Whitney were counted as one person. So yeah, maybe I'll come up wearing my Notorious 9. I'm proud of being part of a Notorious 9.
Yeah, I'm jealous. I want to be part of a Notorious 9 group.
Yeah, I'm absolutely proud of it, because we were whistleblowers, and I'm proud of being a whistleblower.
Well, we definitely were appreciative to go to convention last year, even if it wasn't ideal conditions. Yeah. It was still fun.
Yeah, I had a lot of fun.
We proved that we could come together. I knew that the people on the floor were going to approve the online delegates, because libertarians are driven by a sense of equity. And it's a shame we had to waste a whole day because the LNC thought it was better, and we're going to shove it down the delegates' throats rather than trusting the delegates to do the right thing. If the LNC had just trusted the delegates, it would have been one vote, wham, bam, thank you, ma'am, we would have been done with that. It took a whole day because the LNC overstepped its bounds, and then the delegates had to bitch slap them, and I'm glad they did. Yeah. I wish they had censored them, even though I'm part of the LNC. I wish we had gotten our asses censored for that.
Yeah, and then the last day we had to rush a bunch of stuff, like at-large elections, and then platform committee, like you were mentioning, barely got to be up on stage at all.
We didn't get it at all. I got up, and then somebody moved to suspend the rules to do something else, and we never got anything heard. The only thing that got heard were the plank deletion. That vote did get heard, but other than that, and it failed, as it always does, because they keep trying to ram the abortion plank into getting deleted, and it gets defeated. But that's the right to try it. But it gets defeated each time.
Well, so that was my second national convention. I went in 2018 to New Orleans. I got to vote for you in your first run. I still got the fan.
Oh, cool! Yeah.
I should have grabbed that. I guess I could, but so what was I gonna say? Oh, so that was my second convention, and in the first convention I went to, it was kind of the same thing. We ran out of time. Nobody, they didn't get to elect the judicial committee, and this year we, luckily we had already done the presidential election previously, but is there anything that can be done, or is there anything in the works that like maybe we're going to function a little faster?
Yeah. What needs to be done is we need to revolutionary our antiquated voting system. It's just absolutely crazy. If you from 2020, you'll remember I took offense at Evan McMahon in his nomination speech saying he could have gotten it done in an hour. No, you couldn't have. It's just literally impossible. With the way we do things is so insane. So we right now have a convention voting process committee. Because I tell people, go look at 2018 when you had Alicia Matson, who nobody can doubt her abilities. And it took her forever too. It just does. It's not her. It's not the teller team. I think I had a better teller team than she did, and it still took forever. But so this convention voting process committee is looking at our current bylaws to see what other systems we can implement within the bylaws that we have now, and then also recommend some bylaw changes that would allow us to do even better. But our current bylaws, really the only things that we probably can do, though we might have thought of something else, but this one thing we know we can do is potentially use scantrons. Now, I know that is old technology, but it's fast. And then you only, and the way it was proposed is they would be run through two separate machines. And if the machines agreed, fine. On any ones they disagreed, those would be hand counted. And any that were challenged could be hand counted. But that would speed things up probably by 2/3. But that's where the bottleneck is in the antiquated voting system. It's crazy.
So they had that app, but it wasn't functional by. Is that? Are they still trying for that, or?
We are, and that is that app's developed by TJ, who's an LP member. He's the California regional alternate, and he had just started developing it. So, it was no surprise that we couldn't work out all of the bugs. It's I'm like the biggest proponent of that app. It's really, really, I wish we had gotten to use it. It's fantastic. But it's questionable if our bylaws allow any kind of electronic voting. Yeah. We're trying to see a way clear that maybe it can be done if it's done like concurrently with some written ballots that could be audited with a challenge. But a scantron is a written ballot. So that immediately satisfies the bylaws. But we're looking at that because that is a huge, huge problem. And it wasn't just 2018 and 2020. In 2016, we ran out of time. And that was my first convention. From what I understand, we've always run out of time. And it's not fair to, like in 2020, to not let the at-larges give nomination speeches.
Yeah, that
these
seems kind of
people
weird.
ran and they spent a lot of time and money, and to just do away with that. And let me tell you, in 2020, the mistake that was made, and they didn't want to listen to me, I did get up when they switched the voting method for vice chair, secretary. At the last minute, they switched it to approval voting. My tellers we were already all set up. They don't realize we prepare all the ballots and everything ahead of time. Mm-hmm. And switching it to approval voting made it take twice as long. They did it to save time, and it didn't. So
Daniel Fishman wrote an open letter to Libertarians suggesting that the LNC chair be elected to 4-year terms opposed to 2. How do you feel about that?
It's an awful idea. And it's been proposed in the past and gotten shot down every single time. And I don't like when bylaws committees keep trying to put forth things that have already been rejected multiple times, unless you are changing it in some way. To me, it's like you're just going to keep throwing something against the wall till it sticks. And I think that's disrespectful of the delegates' time. But we do have a problem with the chair position, but it's not that they're not elected to 4-year terms. It's that we have a very strong chair model. Let me tell you, and I've said this before, and it's not a criticism against our current chair or our former chair. It's a criticism of the model, not of the people who end up with the positions. But people think we have officers in this party. We do not. I'm allegedly an officer. No, I'm not. I'm a figurehead. That's why I joke around and say I'm the minutes maid, the vice chair is the gavel warmer, and the treasurer is the master of coin. That is it. If you think the chair confers with the officers on any decisions like you would think, no, they don't. They don't have to. We have the LNC itself in some ways is ceremonial, because a lot of the really big decisions are just simply made unilaterally by the chair. Now, the LNC can come in and override that, but if you know anything about group dynamics, they just don't do that. Groups also don't remove one of their own. That's why Arvin couldn't get removed that one time, because groups just don't do that. They don't, because you become friends with everybody and it gets personal. So the LNC they very rarely come in and override the chair. Yeah, they allegedly have that power. But like people complain about the messaging that we're doing now, the LNC didn't direct that. It's unilaterally by the chair. And I don't think that's the right way for our organization to run. So in most of the arguments posed by Dan Fishman, they could be solved by changing that structure, not by keeping that structure and making it worse by having that person in for 4 years. And the reality is, if you've got a good chair, you can have them as long as they're willing to run. It's not like they're done after 2 years. If they want to run again, you could have them as long as you want. So make them work for it. This party, we are so precarious as a third party. All third parties are. If we got in a chair that went off the rails for 4 years and alienated the base, we would destroy our party. That will be a very, very 4 long years. And every state party that went to 4-year terms for their chair ditched it after the first time. There's a reason for that. That can be a long ass 4 years. No, I will be urging people to vote against this. It's a terrible, terrible idea. But changing the model, amending the bylaws to make the officers actual officers with some checks and balances so that the executive director isn't at the mercy of the chair. Because I felt bad for Dan Fishman during that last term when everyone knows I believe Nick went off the rails. Dan could not do anything because Nick could fire him. He was between a rock and a hard place. And we don't have a whistleblower policy for our staff, which is something else that is just appalling. So everyone was blaming Dan. I felt bad for Dan. Dan did the best he could in a very bad situation. So it shouldn't be that way, because look what happened to Daniel Hayes. The chair unilaterally removed the convention committee chair because he wasn't doing what he wanted. Now, the LNC did get mad enough about that to take that power away from the chair. But it took an awful lot for that. So we need to have the chair be a presiding officer and actually give more power to the LNC, which will then be more representative of the breadth of views within the party. And we will come to a more consensus than you do with just one person.
Yeah. Are there any more bylaw changes you'd like to see on a national level? I know we've talked about a couple of them already.
Yes, I'm opinionated. Yes, I don't think the LNC should be appointing the bylaws committee. There's 10 people on the bylaws committee, and all 10 of them are appointed by the LNC. The bylaws is what constrains the LNC. Having the LNC pick the bylaws committee is like having the fox guarding the hen house. It's a horrible idea. What I would suggest in order to better represent the party is have, in theory, we're supposed to have 10 regions. We don't usually, because they aren't equally 10%. We usually have 8 or 9 regions. But what I would like to see it say is that the 10 regions each get to appoint a member of the bylaws committee. If we don't have 10 regions, then whatever remaining seats, those could be appointed by the LNC. So this time, 8 would be appointed by the regions and 2 would be appointed by the LNC. I think that, gives states incentive to be in a region rather than it just being a mere formality. And regions tend to band together regions because they have something in common, be it geography or ideology or whatever it might be. And then they know their concerns will get represented, not the LNC's concerns, their concerns. So I would like to see that change, and I will be submitting that to the bylaws committee for their consideration. I would also like to see, and a lot of people don't like this, and I don't know why, because being a delegate is an honor. It's an honor to be a delegate, and you are representing your state. I think that on the list of delegates that gets published out to people, that there should be email addresses and phone numbers on there, rather than just mail. Because what happens, if you ever want to appeal a decision of the LNC, you have to get 10% of the delegates from the last convention to sign off. How are you going to find them? You're going to write them? You're going to write all 1,500 or whatever, including alternates? That puts the right of appeal only in the pocket of people who have the money to do that. If the right of appeal is going to be conditioned upon contacting delegates, you need to have contact information for those delegates and not make it for just for people who can afford, $1,000 in mailing. I can't afford that. So if you don't want phone numbers and email addresses, then tie the right of appeal to something else, to something that even parliamentarians could take advantage of. Because right now, only people who have $1,000 in disposable income can do it, and that's not fair.
Justin Amash recently tweeted that I think we should call anarchism and libertarianism, and then he followed up by saying that libertarianism is about protecting rights, not opposing government. What are your feelings on that tweet in particular?
Well, I tweeted back at him multiple times. He kind of got dogpiled. He hasn't said anything like that again. Here's the problem we have, I think, sometimes when candidates switch over is, again, it's like when you make the convert the pastor. We've put him like he has some kind of authority. He doesn't know us yet. He doesn't. If making a statement like that, he has a fundamental misunderstanding what a good portion of this party is all about. And you got to give him time to learn. I don't think you can fault him for that. But he got corrected. I actually did a show on it on my YouTube channel about my various feelings about that. But it was ignorant. It was very, very ignorant on his part.
I know a lot of people they don't like to bring in outsiders like that. Where I think it's probably a good thing that he didn't run for president this year. Like you said, give him a little bit of time, get his feet wet. I would have liked to have seen him run for Congress again. I think it's a shame that we finally got a libertarian congressman, and it was for 6 months, so that was a big disappointment. But there was a lot in no fault. I love Joejorgensen. I voted for her. I thought she was a great principled candidate. I was proud to vote for her. But one of the disappointments coming out of the campaign, and I'm not saying it's their fault, but I think it was something like 20 different states lost ballot access, because a lot of states are tied to the presidential race in some fashion. Do you how do you feel about like a Justin Amash running, somebody that has more name recognition? For me, it's just if we can get those 20 states or whatever ballot access, I don't know. I think it's kind of worth it because the president candidate, I mean, realistically, isn't going to win. They're just kind of a figurehead. You know, unless we're included in the debates, I don't see. It doesn't matter how good the candidate is. I'm not sure that they're going to win. So ballot access, do you feel that's more important or having more principled candidate?
Well, if you're going to have a candidate that's going to run mostly for ballot access, they need to agree to either keep their mouth shut on things they don't agree with on the party, unlike Gary Johnson baked the Nazi cake, and realize that they got nominated for ballot access purposes. And the things they do agree with, trumpet those loud, because you got to have both. You've got to be espousing principles because that's what's going to attract your new activists and your candidates at lower levels. But we also need ballot access. I don't mind. I hope Justin Amash runs the next time, but I also hope he learns not to say things like that by that time. And I think he will. I'm not expecting him to turn anarchist or whatever. I want Justin to be Justin, but I also don't want him to shit on people who think differently. That is perfectly acceptable within the party, because he really put his foot in it there. And if you just go look at my Twitter pinned, where your description is, you'll see what I put there is directly just because of Justin Amash. It says, no, some libertarians do oppose government like I do. And that was directly in response to Justin Amash's comment. And I do think he learned from that. And I hope he didn't get skewered too badly. Like, I tried to be polite. And I hope nearly everyone was polite. And I hope he learned from it. I think he's a tremendous asset to the party. Some people think I don't like him. And then there was that completely asinine rumor that the objections I had to us violating our bylaws over the convention was to keep Justin Amash from running. I don't wish I had that much power, but let's say, no, I don't have that much power. I had nothing to do with Justin Amash. Get over yourselves. It had to do with exactly what I said it had to do with, the bylaws. We cannot scream about the government violating the Constitution if we violate our own equivalent of the Constitution, because emergency. We can't do that. We can't do that and look ourselves in the face.
Kristi Noem, our governor, recently did a press conference like a week ago where she said that now that we have legalized medical marijuana in South Dakota, everybody is going to be growing 1,000 plants in their homes, and kids will be getting into that. Are people in Colorado growing 1,000 plants in their homes, and are children getting into it?
I came to Colorado right at the time. It had already passed, but it hadn't been put into effect yet. So it was still in that whole panic phase where everyone was saying, you guys are going to see in 6 months, it's going to be the zombie pot. No, it's now been years, and it's no big deal. It's no big deal. People are not, they're not growing 1,000 plants in their basement because, for one thing, growing marijuana plants is a pain in the ass. And the stuff that's at the dispensaries is better. Why would you bother? And if their kids aren't getting into it unless the parents are careless, just like the kids could get into the booze closet if the parents are careless. But no, most people here don't even, we don't even think about it anymore. It's like such a non-issue.
For us here, we always hear lawmakers or the police or something, and we can't be like Colorado. We don't want South Dakota to end up like Colorado. But then, think about all the issues Colorado has. But then when you push them, it's like, well, what issues are you talking about? One of the main ones we hear will be the smell. Oh, geez, it smells. People are smoking. And it's like, wow. So you're going to deny liberty because of a smell.
And I will say that is maybe the biggest thing. is sometimes people walk around reeking, but you want to know what? People were walking around reeking before too. I mean, it happened. I mean, the people who are going to smoke pot are going to smoke pot, and people who are going to walk around reeking like pot are going to walk around reeking like pot. Most people don't want to smell. They don't want it with BO, and they don't want it with pot either. The people who don't care whether it's legal or illegal.
Or we just don't know, and we walked into the store and we're like, what the
yeah, it's such a non-issue here.
Yeah.
So yeah, in Oregon now, what I don't know if it was just Portland or the whole state of Oregon legalized or decriminalized
drugs,
use or quantities of all drugs.
Mm-hmm.
Good for them. They beat us. Colorado should be doing that.
I thought I had heard California had done that a couple years ago too.
I don't think so. I think it's just been Oregon as the vanguard on that.
I think Colorado legalized mushrooms, didn't they?
Denver did.
Denver did. Okay.
Yeah, but illegalized kratom.
Oh man.
Which is ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. How hypocritical can you be?
That's the opposite of here. You'll go to prison for mushrooms, but they got kratom at these stores up here.
Yeah, you can get it in other places in Colorado, just not in Denver. That is absolutely insane. But yes, I can never pronounce it. Psilocybin, whatever. Yeah, but the mushrooms are legal in Denver.
John Brennan, the former CIA head, said that libertarians are potential terrorists. What are your thoughts on that statement?
He's what an ass. My thoughts on that statement have more to do with the fact that the National Party didn't say squat about that more than him saying it. You know my disappointments with the messaging of the National Party. I think it's
yeah.
I don't even have words enough to say how disappointing it is. But yeah, we didn't say anything about that. We finally put out a press release. I don't know if you saw my Facebook post. This is sad that this was funny. And things that are funny are generally funny because there's an element of truth to it. So I put something out that said, yay, the National Party finally put out a press release regarding the mandates. And somebody posted immediately, for or against.
Yeah, I did see that.
Funny because, yeah, is it for or against? I mean, obviously against, but, you know, you wouldn't know it by their silence in the past year. This is the biggest civil rights violation of our lifetimes. And the National Party was asleep on the job. That, to me, is such an indictment of the National Party. And I tried to override it with the LNC, and I got voted down. So on that, and I'm not the most popular person on the LNC because I keep bringing it up, and you want me to shut up. And I go, yeah, I didn't do that last term, and I got reelected on that platform. You can do it now. The minute I start caring about LNC Inc. more than liberty is the time I need to quit the LNC or get shot in the head, one or the other. That's why I said I'm in the party because I care about liberty. Some people care about liberty because they're in the party, and that's backwards. Our ultimate duty, the party's just a vehicle. And if we were to succeed, there would be no need for us anymore. In the ideal society we envision, there wouldn't be this. So we need to keep our eye on the fact and not get all cultic or worshipful about the party for the party's sake. Now, there are some circumstances where I do vote for candidates I don't like for the party's sake because of things like ballot access. You know, I will always vote for the Libertarian candidate, even when Bill Weld was on the ticket. For the party's sake, there are some legitimate things for that. But in general, it needs to be about liberty, not the party for the party. Whenever people act like the party for the party, that's when I always say I can hear the capital letter then. The party, comrade, and I want to go up. You know, immediately when I can hear the capital letter and party in the way you speak, I want to run away shrieking.
What's the greatest difficulty in being the LNC secretary?
People who enjoy being secretary, they're special. And I mean, it's a lot of work. It takes me people don't believe this, but it takes about 40 hours to produce a set of regular LNC meeting minutes. So I'd say that the time commitment, but other than that, I love doing it. So I don't find any of it onerous, but somebody who hates doing things like that will find everything awful, I suppose. But it's like treasurer. I didn't want to do that for nothing, but which is weird to me.
Yeah, he won by acclamation at the convention.
Yeah.
I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah. So yeah, that's nutty. So it's a big time commitment. So that what I would say is the most difficult thing.
We currently have our executive committee elections for South Dakota coming up at our convention in a week. What advice do you have for our delegates when they cast their votes this Saturday?
Know who they're voting for and know what they stand for. Don't be surprised, and if you learn about the candidates and make sure you're making an informed choice. That's what I would say. Make them work for it.
Hell yeah.
And not because somebody's your friend, there's too much of that, The LNC votes like that a lot for committee seats. If you look on the LNC when we're voting for other LNC members for committee seats, if you see there's somebody who has never voted for X person, then that person's a partisan, because the delegates elected all of us because we have strengths. You don't have to like that other person. But if you act like they're not good at anything so that you couldn't vote for them to be on a committee, that's a complete slap in the face to the delegates. And it shows you're a partisan. There are people on the LNC I don't like, but I have voted for them because I knew their strength and they were the best person for the committee. Me liking you is not a requirement for you to be on a committee. But I can tell you, there is a certain handful of people, you looked at the voting record, who have never voted for certain people. Those people should not ever be back on the LNC, in my opinion. And I hope they're listening and they change those habits, because we don't need that kind of partisanship on the LNC. We should be a meritocracy, not a friendocracy.
Daryl Root, our treasurer, says treasurers are cool.
It's a thankless job, but it's
important.
I bet you don't want to be secretary, I love doing it. My husband doesn't get it whatsoever, but I love doing it.
Who are your biggest influences?
What, Libertarian?
Yeah, anybody.
I don't know. I don't get influenced by very many people. Yeah. I mean, in libertarian philosophy, it'd be Rothbard. I mean, I'm a hardcore Rothbardian. I also admire Robert Nozick a lot. But outside of that, I don't, it's like when people ask me what my favorite band is. I don't know. I like.
What's your favorite color?
I have a favorite color. But like bands, I don't like anybody's whole album. I like certain songs. So like with people, I like certain things they do and don't like other things they do. I don't know. I don't really have super big influences, but philosophically, Rothbard would definitely be one of them.
Do you have any advice for the next communications director or secretary, since you've held those two positions before?
Yes. For communications director, one thing I learned is the press releases are a numbers game. You should be sending out press releases every single week, and they will start to get picked up. And no matter what the issue, like you can find a freedom issue, and I have this advice for the National Party as well, every single week, easily, absolutely easily, you can have a freedom angle, even if it seems to be something inconsequential. It's important to somebody. And if you think it's, maybe inconsequential, then you'll probably be the only one writing about it. And sometimes these writers and these papers are desperate to fill space. So I would get a lot published just because it's a numbers game. So that's what I would say, is just continually put stuff out. and you will start to get attention. Because the fact is, and I tell people this when they start county parties, they're like, why should I bother when it's only me and one other guy? I go, because then you get to be the Libertarian Party of X, and you can cast a longer shadow than your form would seem to indicate. Because when you send something out signed by the Libertarian Party of X, they don't know it's just you.
Mm-hmm.
They don't know. They're impressed by the officialness of it. So always send something out. For secretaries, learn Roberts. It's not hard. It's not scary. And it's also not, a lot of people have a really bad attitude about Roberts, saying, oh, it actually clogs up the system more than helps. And the people who say that, because I used to say that, are the people who don't know it. And whether you admit it or not, you're a bit threatened by it because you don't know it. And once I learned it, I realized its utility, and the secretary really needs to know that very well and learn how to take proper good minutes. Most minutes I see are terrible, and it's not hard. They're terrible by being too much. Minutes really aren't supposed to include a lot of things people put in there. And I'm guilty of that too. Sometimes I put too much detail, though I think I've gotten better at that in this term. Last term, I think I went overboard. But yeah, you don't put summaries of what people said and things like that. You're not a transcriptionist, So that's, find somebody who knows what they're doing and learn from them. I learned from Alicia, and she was phenomenal.
Well, our current secretary of the party, her name's Ashley, and she's a big fan of yours, and she's supposed to be here. She's supposed to be there this Saturday.
Awesome.
I think she might be running for re-election. So hopefully you can impart some of your wisdom.
Oh, certainly, yeah. Would love to.
Shortly before the election, there was a mass suspension of libertarian accounts on social media. I know there's a big debate on how friendly with the government, private companies.
There's Ashley. Sorry.
Basically, my question is, what are your thoughts on the big tech censorship that happened right before the election? It seemed like it was directed towards libertarian accounts. I know there's some LNC members that are still banned from Facebook.
Yeah, Joshua Smith is still banned, I believe. I think libertarians in general are taking the wrong position and have a very surface level view of this. It's the private company argument, and no, they're not exactly a private company. The state uses the power of the state to pressure them to do things, and they turn around and use the power of the state to get their way as well. If you ignore that, you're really ignoring a big part of the problem, and you're proving true what Lenin once said. I believe it was Lenin. It might have been Marx, but it was one of those guys who said, it's the capitalists who will sell us the rope that we're going to hang him with. And you got to be wise as a serpent and gentle as a dove, going back to my religious analogies. But they are, in fact, it wasn't merely a private company exercising a private decision, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And they've completely partnered together to keep competitors from rising up. Look what happened to Parler. I mean, that was just absolutely crazy, absolutely crazy. And here's where I think libertarians are getting it wrong. And I actually want to read you a proposal I am going to be proposing. I'm chair of the Colorado Platform Committee. And if this passes Colorado, I will probably put something like it. I'm just pulling it up on my drive here. Put something like it into nationals. Just give me 1 second to pull it up here. Platform Committee 2021. Now let me find my proposals. Resolved. But it's under freedom of expression, I believe. It's coming up now. All right. This is the proposal. We have a freedom of expression plank, and I am proposing adding this to an existing plank. While private entities have the right to exclude speech, we believe that the practice of deplatforming harms the free and open exchange of ideas, and freedom of speech is valuable in its own right and should be strongly advocated in both public and private spheres. So I think that's a value that we need to relearn as libertarians, that while private companies have the right to do something, that doesn't mean you can't criticize it or say it's the wrong thing to do. We seem to understand that when it comes to if a business put up a no blacks allowed, we would rightly say that was wrong, even while they have the right to do it. We should have the same attitude when it comes to the social media censorship. And we should stop being so eager to cheer on deplatforming. While people can do it, we are impoverished when we don't allow all ideas, even bad ideas, to be said. Because when you deplatform a person, it doesn't change their mind. It just drives it underground. But what it also does, when you take away someone's words, they're only left with violence. When people are allowed to speak openly, even terrible things, it normally does not progress beyond speech. But when you constantly make people out to be a martyr and feel somehow like they're oppressed, they're going to turn to violence. That's the arc of history. So I do believe we need to be free speech purists. And we're not right now as libertarians. We need to be like the old ACLU. The ACLU is a joke now, but they used to champion speech for speech's sake. And I do think speech is valuable for its own sake. And I am absolutely a free speech purist. If a Nazi wants to get up and speak, let them speak. If your ideas are better, it'll be obvious. And obviously our ideas are better. I'd rather hear what they have to say than suppress it.
Yeah. Let them expose themselves.
Yeah. When you silence a person, you've just affirmed that you're scared of them. You're scared of them and their ideas. You don't prove them wrong. You prove yourself a coward.
Yeah. Do you have any more questions, Greg? I've got one left.
Well, I got a couple fun little questions about just conventions and stuff.
Okay.
So on average, you kind of get out there and you do a lot of conventions. How many state conventions do you think how many have you been to total, or how many a year do you think you go to?
Oh my God. It's all on my LPedia page, so I probably could go there and count. But I generally go, on average, this year I'm not, because again, I can't afford to just go. I'm only going to where I'm invited this year because generally at least some of the costs are covered. But in the past, I would be gone every weekend in convention season. So it was just limited by the amount of time. And when I was running, I would go to more than one some weekends. When I was running, I was in New Hampshire on Saturday morning and California on Sunday morning. You could get farther apart than that. So on average, 10 conventions probably a year.
So have you been to just about every state's convention at least once?
No, I go to a lot of the same ones. Like I go to Arizona every year because they're early. It's in January and it's super close and super cheap for me to go from here to there. So there's quite a few states I still haven't been in, but I've been in the two hardest ones. I've been to Alaska and I've been to Hawaii. So I got those out of the way. But no, I've never been to South Dakota, as you know. I've never been to North Dakota. I wasn't at the Nebraska convention, but I was at a convention there. It was the Roads to Liberty thing. Yeah. Wisconsin, I'm going to this year, which I'd never been to before. There's a lot in the Northeast I haven't been to, which I've been to Maine, but I haven't been to Vermont. I haven't been to New Jersey. I was at the Massachusetts convention, so I have been there. I haven't been to New York. So there's a lot over there that I haven't been to. I've been to all the Region 1 states because as Region 1 rep, which is how I got to Hawaii and Alaska.
Yeah, that'd be awesome to go to Hawaii. Just tell your husband, I gotta go. It's part of the job title, job duty. I have to go.
Yeah, I got to go for free because I had a Hawaiian Airlines MasterCard, and I just charged everything on it and then paid it. But I got a free first class both ways to Hawaii on that.
So to follow up with just these state conventions, who would you say had the best state convention that you've ever been to? Now, I don't expect our state convention to rival some of these bigger states because we, on this convention, we'll probably have only spent, $1,000 maybe.
Yeah, that's tough. I will say that Florida, Texas, and California put on kick-ass conventions, and it's not surprising. They have really big states and really big budgets. So I don't, best is very subjective because the smaller ones are much more intimate, and you really get to hang out with libertarians. So, it's really hard to compare. Like, I went to the Delaware convention, and that's probably one of the conventions I had the best time at.
Yeah.
And it wasn't big by any means, but the hospitality shown by the Delaware Libertarians was absolutely incredible. So it depends on what metric you're using.
Yeah.
But for education and just very professional, those 3 states really do put on really, really good conventions.
Yeah, they've got quite a few. I think some of those states have they have 50,000 registered libertarians or something.
We've got that in Colorado.
Oh, geez.
Yeah.
We got a lot of work to do in South Dakota.
Yeah.
We're about 40 registered voters away from hitting 2,500.
Yeah, we've got almost 50,000. We've got 1% of the registered voters in Colorado.
Not too shabby. So then one other question. So I kind of heard coming out of this last LNC meeting that there might possibly be some sort of 50th anniversary celebration in Colorado. Is there any details you might have about that?
It's definitely happening now. That it was brought up at the LNC meeting to give the LNC a chance to object, and the chair this week, seeing no objection, has instructed staff to proceed with negotiating the contract for the venue. So I believe that's happening in August.
Do you know where? Denver. Oh.
Yeah, the property they are looking at. It's on a lake, so it's like the only beachfront property in Denver, and because it's like on a lake and beach, it's big enough that if people are uncomfortable being close together, they can distance and things like that. So that's what they're looking at right now, but they haven't signed a contract. So I don't know if that's where it's going to end up at. They have 4 venues they're looking at, but I think that's the one they prefer because people can then congregate to their comfort level.
Yeah. Well, it sounds awesome. Any excuse to hit up Denver is a good time.
And we've got to do something for the 50th anniversary. That would be absolutely crazy if we did not.
Yeah, for sure. So we had Josh Smith on here about a month ago. And I asked him this question, and I'll ask you the same one. Who would be your favorite person to work with on the LNC, past or present? He didn't exactly have one. He kind of praised a lot of people, but just who are your favorite people to work with in the past or now? Or
ironically, because we started being frenemies or enemies, is Alicia Madsen. In the beginning, we did not like each other, but at the end of that term, she was a tiger for the right thing. I get a lot of recognition for the fight that I put up, but Alicia did a lot and wasn't really recognized for it. So Alicia, definitely for past LNC, but in the current LNC, John Phillips, Aaron Adams, Whitney Billiot, Steve Nicala. There's a certain core group of people that I just agree with on most basic principles. Dustin Nana. You could tell by the voting records, really, and I'm sure I'm forgetting somebody now, and it's going to be all, but there's quite a few on the LNC that I really, really enjoy working with, and John Phillips is just hilarious. So, I mean, on anything, John Phillips is going to be like a blast because we're proud
to have John Phillips as our regional rep. He's a good dude.
Yeah. And Aaron,
he called everybody when they ran for office. Yeah.
So yeah, I love John Phillips, but Dustin Nana, a lot of people don't pay a lot of attention to because he's so quiet, but he's a fantastic LNC member. Absolutely fantastic. And you want to know who is a delight to be on the LNC with is Valerie Sarwark. We don't agree on everything, and but she is very, very fair, and she's just always so pleasant, And when she dubbed the new porcupine emblem George Quilly's, I mean, who can beat that? So I love Valerie. Again, and that's somebody I probably am on the opposite side of voting most of the time, but she's just such a genuinely nice person.
So I guess we never talked. What do you want to talk about at convention during your speech?
Oh, well, first of all, I'm always prepared to talk about whatever. How long do I have?
I think we have the space for 7 hours maybe, so that's maybe it'll take
and I haven't seen the agenda, so I would imagine maybe we, in my perfect vision, I guess I think
you are our keynote speaker, so I think you can speak as long as you want to, and we'll definitely have time to finish our business because we're a small organization, so we don't
I was almost going to suggest we get our elections out of the way and let the convention cap off with whatever you want to do.
Well, if there's sufficient time, there's a presentation that I've given at a lot of conventions that I think is really, really important, and it's on the statement of principles. But that is a full presentation, so I can be prepared for that. And then there is a shorter one for ones that people that don't have enough time, that I've only given at Oklahoma so far. And that was kind of on the spur of the moment. So that is on messaging. And actually the theme of it is about that perennial question, but who will build the roads? And it's built around that statement. It goes in a different direction than you think, but that's a shorter one. On reaching people with who have the typical objections. So either one of those I could do, but I also am the type of person who can get up and for short things, like if somebody goes, you have it half an hour, just talk. I don't even have to prepare for that. I mean, I've done that so many times. Though it's better if you prepare, but I can speak on anything, but the statement of principles, a presentation I have is super, super important, I think.
Yeah.
So one thing real quick, we got these in the mail the other day, and I just happen to have an extra shirt here.
That's nice.
Nice pink one for you, and I'll make sure to give it to you this weekend.
Awesome. That would be great. But I do have a question. Will there be an overhead projector or anything for presentations?
I think we're going to bring a TV.
Okay, if I had a PowerPoint that goes along with something.
I'll have my laptop, so if somebody has we have the TV.
Yeah, we'll have a TV. I'll bring my HDMI cord, so we can just hook the computer right up to the TV.
I mean, I could do it without it, because I have in plenty of places, particularly at some smaller conventions, but it's better to have the visuals so that people can see what you're talking about.
Yeah. And then I guess my final question was, who's the most libertarian?
Me!
Yes. Good answer.
And I don't even agree with me half of the
time. But thanks for coming on. You've been a great guest. We're going to have a good time next Saturday. It's going to be excited to hear you speak.
I'm really looking forward to it. So I love going to smaller states because it's more intimate. You really get to know people. And I've never been to South Dakota, so that's exciting.
Well, if you guys like the outdoors and you want to mess around for an hour or two this weekend, definitely check out Falls Park.
Okay.
It's in Sioux Falls. It's the falls that the town's named after.
All right, awesome. Yeah, Wayne and I are very outdoorsy. That's why we're in Colorado.
And then about 20 minutes outside of town, there's a place called the Palisades. It has a tie-in to Jesse James. He robbed a bank in Sioux Falls and he outran some law enforcement and jumped this I don't know what you want to call
canyon thing.
Canyon. Yeah. It's not as impressive once you see it up close, but it's a pretty cool. It's a pretty cool area. So yeah, those are a couple of cool little places to check out.
Yeah, definitely. I'll mention it to Wayne. Because you remember when I got asked, I voluntold him to drive. He's used
Yeah,
to
it is a good 10-hour drive. We apologize for that.
Well,
Hopefully the weather's good for you.
Well, we like driving too because we get to see a lot of the, areas. This is Colorado.
Yeah.
There's still a lot we haven't seen, and we just like driving.
Well, you're going to see a lot of Nebraska, unless you're coming up through the Black Hills.
Yeah, I have no idea because I don't drive, so it's all up to them.
So yeah,
all right, well, we appreciate it. Thank you.
Be sure to check out Caryn and Harlos, the Pink Flame of Liberty show on YouTube. Lots of good stuff on there if you want to learn more about libertarianism. Is there anything else you want to add before we go?
Anything you want to plug?
Well, actually, I haven't had time to really promote this yet because actually right after I did it, I got sick. And then there was an LNC meeting and stuff. And right now we're waiting to see what the government's going to do with this whole COVID thing. Things seem to be calming down, but the government, once it takes power, it never gives it back. And I think the mandates are going to be coming on full force again. And I do think vaccinations in some areas are going to be mandatory. So I have a website already, againstthenextmandate.com. We're encouraging people to print these out and do social media messaging with it. It's very similar to the already Against the Next War campaign that was done in 2016 by antiwar.com. I'm going to be starting to push this heavily, hopefully next week, life willing. But I would encourage people, it's a project you can take on yourself and just, spread the word, even though right now it looks like the mandates are easing up. I don't think it's going to stay that way. I really don't. So no matter what the next mandate is, I'm already against it.
Mandated insurance, mandated.
With weather report, mid-50s and windy. Okay, as long as not another blizzard.
Nice.
Nice.
Yeah, that ain't bad.
Here today.
Yeah, today is pretty crappy here. I got a little barbecue area that I built last summer, and freaking pieces of the tin roof were flying off.
I've got a platform committee meeting immediately after this, and after the platform committee meeting, I think Wayne and we have a Rhino. I don't know if it's a side-by-side ATV. We're going to go out around the neighborhood in it, just because 2 feet of snow, and I don't think the snowplows have been through here, so we're going to have a good old time.
Sounds like.
But yeah, thanks for coming on. That's all I've got. You have anything else, Greg? Or
no, I look forward to meeting you this.
I'm excited. Saturday.
And I'm getting my hair done, so I'm getting freshly pinked for you guys. So I won't have the nasty roots. So did it just for you guys.
Are you gonna bring the Statue of Liberty head set up?
Oh, I can't believe I didn't put it on for this. Of course I will. It's usually standard gear. Of course. I turned them into headset for here, but I've got it's my for my podcast.
Cool. Yeah, that's pretty cool. Yeah.
So, yeah, of course, definitely.
Did you have somebody print them or?
No, I get it from Amazon.
Wow.
Nice.
Yeah, and I got a bunch of them. So
yeah, nice.
I still have mine from the convention in Orlando.
Awesome. A lot of people still have the pink wigs.
Yeah. But yeah, thanks for coming on, and gonna have a good time next Saturday. It's gonna be good to have you as our speaker. You're an excellent libertarian example for people to follow, and I'm a big fan.
All right, thank you so much. I hope you have an awesome night.
Thank you.
All right, bye-bye.
See ya.
All right, so I was thinking for the second part, I think we got about maybe a half hour left. We're gonna talk about Kristi Noem's latest press conference. We got Daryl Root on. He's the treasurer of the Libertarian Party of South Dakota. He's also the host of the Dakota Wrestler Show. Wrestler Show. That's right.
You got
it. Camp Ridger Seasoning owner. Check them out at campridger.net.
A little bit of everything.
Yeah, it's a renaissance man.
Yeah, Caryn was a great guest. I finally got to watch a whole episode from the start, so she was great. I agreed with her on a lot of things. She made a few excellent points, and she was good. I can't wait to see her again Saturday in person.
Yeah, I liked her point on convincing people to register Libertarian from Independent. I thought that was a really good point.
Yeah, that was an excellent point because, a lot of times things come out, polls that say so and so isn't happy with the Republican Party, so other people aren't happy with the Democratic Party. It's like, well, why aren't they happy? Is it happy because they're not too far left? Because they're not moderate enough? It never gives you that information, and if you can use that in an argument to swing people from being independent to libertarian, that's a great idea.
Yeah. All right, let's see. I got my video up here, so we're just gonna listen to this press conference from Kristi Noem and then discuss it for the last half of the show.
All right.
Oh wait, I think I forgot to click audio. Darn it, I always do this. They make the button so tiny you forget about it. Greg abandoned us.
You're going to get more green beer.
Yeah. Is it St. Patrick's Day today?
Wednesday.
Wednesday, okay. All right, well, we'll just start without Greg. He can come.
I forget whether I saw this press conference or not.
Do you want me to announce that? Yes. Everyone who's on the phone, if you could, maybe I should turn on my microphone. Everyone who's on the phone, if you could mute your lines, that'd be fantastic until we get to questions.
The Empress must speak.
Yeah. So yeah, she's going to be commenting on the legislative session that just ended. Ended, I think, this Friday.
Okay, I missed this one then.
So they're going to ask her questions about all the bills, whether she's going to veto them or sign them, and they basically go down the list of everything that's on her desk.
You ready? Okay. Good morning, everyone. We've had a good legislative session. We're nearing the end. We've taken and made decisions that will invest into long-term infrastructure projects, put money into savings and reserves, and made good decisions for our future. We are investing a combined $100 million to finish connecting the state to high-speed broadband access, and we're also putting $50 million into an endowment for the South Dakota Freedom Scholarship.
All right, I just want to mention something. Since I ran for Public Utilities Commissioner, I've got a big beef with spending more money or wasting more of our money on broadband when the Starlink satellite system is up and operational. You can already get internet service that's really good. It's high-speed internet in the most rural locations in America. So I just see that. I see broadband is outdated, and I just don't see the point in investing tens of hundreds of millions of dollars in this.
And there's another company coming out too that's a lot like Starlink. I can't remember the name of it, but there's got to be more than one Starlink type company out there.
Yeah. I forgot the name of it too. There's two of them. They're both like mega corporations,
right?
Big contracts with the government all the time. But
I'm just hoping.
The point is that we don't need to spend our own money on the broadband anymore. We've got high-speed satellite internet available.
I'm just hoping if there's two of them, they don't combine forces like XM and whatchamacallit did with radio, satellite radio.
That will help kids who have financial needs go get a higher education in the future. We're also building the Dakota Events Complex, which will be in Huron, South Dakota, that will help us host national events for livestock and rodeo going forward. And we're putting money into savings, paying off bonds, and trust funds to strengthen the state budget for the future. We're improving healthcare for South Dakotans by making.
So we're using state money to build rodeo stadiums now.
More government spending of stadiums and complexes, which should be done by private enterprise. If it's worth building, people will come and pay for it without government assistance.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's like $20 million or something too. It's like
Jesus. It's like, oh, we got a surplus. Let's start spending some of that surplus money.
If we're going to have a surplus, I have no problem with putting surplus money aside for emergencies. That's just good money management, but we don't need to be building complexes.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I remember when she first talked about it, because she also complained that to implement the marijuana or the legalization of marijuana was going to cost like $7 million. And then on the other hand, it was like, oh, but it's going to cost $20 million to build this barn.
Yeah, exactly. Priorities, lady. Doesn't cost anything for marijuana. Just let people have it.
Yeah, it's your regulation
By making it
money.
more flexible and affordable. We're recognizing healthcare licenses for individuals that are moving to South Dakota from other states, and then we're providing transparency for healthcare costs as it relates to insurance companies. And on Tuesday,
All right, I think that's a good thing, recognizing other states' licenses. I was curious, though, why they didn't recognize the North Dakota investigators who were investigating Roundsburg, why they didn't recognize that polygrapher's license or do a polygraph test in South Dakota. They actually had to bring Roundsburg up to North Dakota to do a polygraph test because of the regulations concerning polygraph licensing. So I don't know.
Too bad we didn't send him there and make sure he didn't come back.
Yeah.
okay, I signed the telehealth bill, which will allow South Dakotans to have greater flexibility in their access to healthcare.
I think that's a good thing to do too. I don't know why that was even a regulation, like why you couldn't just, FaceTime your doctor and then have a doctor's appointment right there. I think it's cost prohibitive to force people to go to the office when it's something minor that can just be answered over the phone.
Right.
And I'm sure you know that yesterday marked the 1-year anniversary since our first COVID cases in the state of South Dakota. It also, sadly, is the 1-year anniversary of our first reported COVID death in the state. We responded by adapting to those challenges and by finding new ways to take care of folks and to problem solve and get through that challenging situation. We also, this legislative session, have been defending freedom and liberty of South Dakotans. We defended life.
Do you guys agree with that statement?
Where they feel like it. She needs to put that on the end of the statement because they definitely weren't defending freedom with marijuana.
Yeah. There should be a big asterisk on that statement that it only applies to the conservative idea of personal liberty.
Precisely.
One good thing she was trying to do, I'll give her this little bit of credit. I don't know if she discusses it in here, probably not, because the legislature did pass it, but she had pushed a bill that was going to limit the ability of like game wardens and wildlife people from just trespassing on people's property, because right now apparently they have some pretty broad powers to be able to enter your property. And so it sounded like a decent bill, but unfortunately
I think that passed, didn't it?
I'm
not sure.
I think it passed. I think she said she's going to sign it.
Okay.
Right. Well,
by signing bills that protected babies that would be born alive. We also signed a piece of legislation that would protect babies in the womb that would be potentially aborted based on a Down syndrome diagnosis.
I just want to point out that if babies are born in South Dakota, nobody's been murdering babies after they've been born. So this bill is kind of.
I'm glad you pointed that out because I wanted to stop for that too. You mean we're presently allowed to kill babies that are born?
Yeah, I just.
I didn't know that.
From diagnosis. We defended liberty by simplifying youth hunting. We empowered parental choice in education, and I did sign that bill yesterday. We did not.
Okay, that was a good bill that went through. I think that would allow homeschooled students to participate in public school sports. And then it allowed them to opt out of standardized testing. I think it's important that there's more than just the public school as an option for schooling. I think homeschooling should be protected. And I think we should even bring in more privatized schools, ones that aren't just religious private charters schools, more just any. Like, I'd want to see a Austrian economics elementary school. Like, I want kids to start learning this stuff early.
The more the
Not
merrier.
expand government control over our citizens like we've seen in some other states as well. We defended property rights. We passed asset forfeiture reform with regards to conservation officers. We also opened up
Not
East
drugs,
River
though.
landowners
No.
to hunting on their own land. And we passed legislation that would codify the Department of Game, Fish, and Parks as
I just want to know, like, we've been a pretty hardcore Republican state for a long time. Why is it now in 2020 that they just allowed you to hunt on your own land in South Dakota just now? I feel like that should have been something that would be done a long time ago.
Right.
versus policy as it pertains to open fields. It's been a busy session. It's been a good session. There are a few things to iron out yet, and I know the appropriators are still working on the budget, but we are in good shape to finish up our work on time and be prepared to go home and come back on veto day to deal with anything that might be left to finish this session. With that, I will turn it over to any questions that you may have. Sure.
So House Bill 1217 protects all student athletes, not just trans athletes. Do you think it's fair to potentially jeopardize all collegiate athletic activity in the state? And is this not expanding government control?
Well, House Bill 1217 is about women's sports and protecting women's sports. It will ensure that girls participate in girls' sports, and going forward, that fairness is there that was promised by Title IX and what it means to.
All right. So what is your thoughts on this? I think it's another transgender bill where they're banning.
She's saying girls playing girls sports and boys playing boys sports. But what she didn't say there was girls are allowed to play in boys sports, but she wants to ban boys, whether transgender or not, from playing in girls sports. You know, if you're a true sexual, if you believe in true equality of the sexes, they should be able to play in each other's sports.
Yeah, I think it's just a waste of time that the legislator focuses on these bills. Like, the most important topic on everybody's mind was legalizing marijuana. That was the biggest thing, and sports betting. That's what was petitioned on.
I mean, are we really? I don't know. Do we even have field hockey in the state? Yeah, I assume we do.
Yeah.
You know, do we really care if a boy is playing field hockey with girls? I mean, I don't.
Yeah. I feel
Well, I'll
like
tell you
the
one
government
thing.
should stay out of this issue.
Yeah, the one thing the government should have done all along to stay out of the issue altogether was, instead of creating this homeschool bill that says that homeschool students can compete in state sports, and instead of coming out with a new bill that's saying trans people can't compete, what they should have done is just got the state out of sports altogether. Sports should be ran by private organizations. They shouldn't even be a part of the educational system.
I would agree.
Because they don't have anything to do with education.
I've made that argument for probably 20 years. It's like sports and extracurricular activities aren't education. Yes, they're nice things for kids to do, but they aren't education. It shouldn't be paid for by the taxpayer.
Well, and I tell you what, if you want
companies put sports leagues together and whatever.
Well, if you want examples of privatized sports, look at most soccer associations. They are not part of the school districts. They're their own organizations. And then it's just a matter of, well, what does that organization want to do? Let them make those decisions. If you have boys and girls competing in soccer together, most people are not going to care. But we do still have separated, girls soccer,
right,
boys soccer. But leave it up to the association. Let's get the state out of it,
Agreed.
Yeah. All right, I'm going to run to the bathroom. I'm going to play it, so I'll be right back in like 30 seconds.
Enforcing that in regards to our Constitution as well.
Governor Northwest András,
Sure.
Forum News Service. Just to follow up on that question, what should happen? You are a transgender child, particularly a transgender girl, and you want to play sports.
Well, this bill isn't about transgender. It's about girls' fairness in girls' sports. So girls will be able to play in girls' sports. If a girl chooses to want to play in a boys' sport, that is still going to be allowed. There isn't a definition here in regards to transgender individuals at all.
But we won't
It is
let
about
boys
the
play in
fairness of
girls'
Title
sports.
IX,
Yeah,
how it impacts
It is kind of
girls'
weird, you
sports.
know. I think
Yes.
government always has been in the business of discrimination, you know?
They have.
I mean, at the end of the day, it's like you're just picking winners and losers. you
Yep,
know?
that's all they do.
Sat down with transgender people and spoke with them about the bill. Do you plan to do anything similar to that?
You know, we are still examining the bill, getting ready to make decisions on it, and that's like we do with every other bill, and we'll continue to move forward.
So do you have any?
I don't have any plans immediately. I don't think there's been any requests to meet with those individuals, but we certainly are open to listening to everybody.
There's a demonstration plan that your residents today. Will you engage with people who are there in any way?
I'm not planning to. Jonathan?
House Bill 1100 obviously
Mhm.
died yesterday. Plans going forward on that, as of now, initiated measure 26 takes effect. What are your plans?
Yeah, I don't have any plans really to pursue further legislation. We're kind of at the end of our time here. I would say I do have concerns about initiated measure 26.
Well, that's
I hope
good
everybody
news that she doesn't
understands
have any
that
more plans.
Under that initiated measure, that people can grow as many plants as they want to at home. They just need a prescription from a doctor and they could grow 500.
Yeah, I don't know. I've got a problem with that. I think people should be able to grow as many plants as they want at home. Any plant, whatever plant
Yeah.
you want.
Exactly.
I could see that maybe if it's an invasive species from another country, maybe we might want to not grow those plants.
Right.
But marijuana, like I don't even. Why would you need a doctor's prescription to grow plants? And another thing I was going to bring. Oh, has she said it yet? I'm going to make sure she says it before I comment on it.
100, 1,000.
Oh, crap.
500
Here,
to
let me
1,000.
Go back.
500 to
back it up.
1,000.
Back it up 5 seconds.
They just need a prescription from a doctor and they could grow 500, 1,000 plants if they wanted to.
I don't know what kind of living conditions you guys are in, but I know for a fact I can't fit a general South Dakotan can't fit 1,000 marijuana plants in their home.
Exactly.
Unless they build like a big ass shed out in the backyard, or you have a big ass basement.
Well, I don't see anybody growing it in a garden because it'll get stolen.
Yeah,
You know, so you're gonna have to grow it in your basement or a barn, and it's just ridiculous. It's going to extremes.
So
but maybe
I
she was
am,
being sarcastic on purpose.
yeah, so I am 26 only allows you to have up to 3 ounces. And so legally you couldn't, she's saying you could grow all these plants, but legally you wouldn't be able to harvest those plants because any more than like 1 or 2 plants, and you're going to be over that 3 ounce limit.
That's true.
Yeah. But I don't know. It's just ridiculous anyways, because it's like, do we put limits on home brew? Because if I brew 5 gallons or 10 gallons or
1,000 gallons.
Yeah, bring
Actually,
1,000 gallons to the convention.
I say that, but actually they probably do have a limit.
Yeah, there is a limit. I don't recall what it is.
The kids of all ages will have access to marijuana and will have the ability to utilize those homegrown products as well. So that's my concern.
Oh my goodness.
Well,
Okay,
you know,
so-
how many men have subscriptions to Viagra? You know, you can make the argument children have, you know, access to Viagra pills.
Yeah, it's just the reason why kids should be taking this is because of their seizures. So they
Right.
give them like THC oil or something, and so they prevents their seizures from happening. But a kid can't go to a dispensary and get their
No.
own medicine. A parent needs to do that for them. So she's suggesting that kids are just going to be able to walk into these dispensaries and just walk out with weed. It's like, no, that's not how it's going to go. It's basically just scare tactics. I don't know.
The unwritten rule of government: always use kids to put fear into people.
And the thing is, this passed by 70%. So she's only appealing to less than a third of South Dakotans with her rhetoric.
Exactly.
You know,
Yeah.
she might have had a good shot at a presidential run if she would have just dropped her anti-weed stance and just let it happen. Like nobody would be able to argue that she's for personal liberties then, because you know she did not shut down the state. I mean, to the extent the other states were shut down.
I mean,
But,
compared
this
to
is
other politicians, she does support freedom a lot more than what a lot of other politicians do. But the entire nation pretty much is supporting marijuana, recreational and especially medicinal. And the fact that when it goes against both of them, I mean, that's just not common sense.
Well, she's not playing good politics, because if you're a good politician, that means your position's going to change depending on how the winds are blowing. And
Yeah.
the winds are not blowing in your favor. So it's just, it's one of those things where it's a really dumb stance that just doesn't even make sense. In 2020,
Oh, she
2021,
decides to run in 2024. She will have magically seen the light come that March or something.
Yeah, I was reading an article. I'm going to see if I can find it so I can get the exact quote, but if not, I can just paraphrase. But it was mentioning that in the halls of the, because I am 26, they put an amendment on this House Bill 1100 to decriminalize marijuana. And then so that was in the Senate. They put that amendment on and it went back to the House. And then the House was not about to decriminalize marijuana at all. So since they couldn't agree, that in fact caused initiated Measure 26 to go as the voters voted on it. It's not going to be tampered with by the legislator. But there's a big commotion. They had another meeting, like one last meeting. They're like, we're going to get 3 House members and 3 senators. We're going to put them in a room and we're going to see if we can make a compromise to delay medical without decriminalizing marijuana. Daryl's mic must have came out or something. But anyways, that meeting only lasted like 30 minutes because they couldn't agree. They're like, we're just wasting our time. We're not even going to try to come to terms with each other. Well, anyways, let me see if I can find the section in this article here. I don't know if I'm going to find it in time, but basically, Kristi Noem's staff members, there's a commotion in the hallway after that meeting of her staff members versus senators trying to get them to come back to the table, and they were just not having it. So I don't know. I'm proud of the Senate of South Dakota for killing this House bill that was trying to delay medical marijuana from being implemented. And I think it's crazy that our governor's staff is trying to influence how the legislator is voting by having her staff members there, causing commotion even in the halls of the legislator. It's like, what are you doing?
Yeah, that's what I've even heard about being a Republican legislator is that if you're not voting, if you're not towing the line and you're not voting the way they want you to, the leader of the party will call you into the office and berate you, and
take a ruler across your fingers.
That's why I always try to. We need libertarians elected because it's like, man, if you don't want party masters telling you how to vote, what to do, what to think,
I remember, I think 2 years ago, the Republicans put out this like pledge that they wanted all their candidates to sign. That said that you're going to abide by the Republican Committee of South Dakota and you're not going to step out of line and you promise to do this. And then everybody that didn't sign it, they sent their Republican bloggers after them to attack them and call them not part of the team.
I was really hoping we could stand this program up, getting stakeholder feedback and information. That would have given us a little time to do it correctly, but I'm disappointed that we didn't come to a resolution on that. So as of the end of this session, it looks as though initiated measure will stay as it was on the ballot.
Would you consider calling this-
As it should happen.
As it
Why
should,
do they-
exactly.
Why are they even trying to tamper with it? It's like, okay, this is what we voted on. This is the big poll. We
Look
took
how
a
sad
poll.
she looks.
Yeah, 55% of the people in South Dakota wanted full legalization. 70% wanted medical. So they should have just gone for day one and coming up with a plan to implement it. And I
Just
think the plan
admit-
to implement it is already in the initiative itself. They just didn't want to follow that
Yeah,
plan.
I just admit you lost this one. Move on.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's always funny to see the party of reduced regulations fighting to over-regulate something.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
that was a lot of their argument, was that we need to delay it because we need to make these changes and we need to do this and that. It's like you need to over-regulate it, is what you're saying.
Keep going.
I haven't considered it yet.
No.
Yes.
So you're saying that the women's sports bill is not about transgender people, it's about girls' sports, but the bill would restrict trans women from being able to participate on a team that aligns with their gender identity. So are you implying that trans people don't exist?
No, not at all.
Great question.
Yes.
I was kind of complaining about this to Devin recently. I think it was just a private conversation, but I was, when all this, the cannabis legislation was still going through, and it was kind of up in the air, and I was like, every time these guys threaten transgenders with some bill or something, they got 200 people sitting outside the freaking pier, protesting that shit. I'm like, how come we haven't hit up here yet protesting?
For the marijuana stuff, I know.
Yeah,
Dude, I asked the South Dakotans for better marijuana laws like all the time. Like, yo, when's the protest? When's this happening? We're gonna get up there. And I thought we were gonna do it while the legislators were up there deliberating stuff, but we didn't do that. That's over. So it's just like,
I'm glad we won and we didn't need to, but yeah.
I would have went, with enough notice.
Like, we could have convinced them to just pass the full legalization right there in the legislature, and like get a veto proof majority and just get it done, And you don't have to worry about disenfranchising all the voters and all the petitioners and everybody that supported this, because they're going to be pissed if the Supreme Court doesn't rule in favor. And because a lot of time and effort, a lot of sweat equity went into it, a lot of volunteers, and it's just inexcusable to me that we're even like worried about it not going into effect.
And then one of the things the government will immediately do is let's assume that medical is fully legal this year. So what the government will do within a couple years, let's say that recreational doesn't go through, is the government will start saying that the medical program's being abused and that all these people that shouldn't qualify for it are just going and getting these prescriptions. And it's like, well, yeah, had you just legalized it recreationally, nobody would need to abuse that program. Nobody would need to go through all these extra steps of getting a license, basically, from a doctor. Like, we could have just been adults about the whole damn thing and went to a store and purchased the stuff.
Yeah.
But instead, you want to play all these games.
Yeah, dude.
More generally, like section 1, but further on down in the bill, there are some other things that I have questions about. Do you think it's appropriate that kids should have to go to the courts to essentially prove their genitalia just to get reinstated on a sports team?
Well, in South Dakota, in regards to this legislation, it reflects birth certificate.
Man, I'm just going to say these are just some weird questions coming out in 2021 that I would never expect to hear at a press conference. I don't know, even 10 years ago.
Right.
That feels, I
think we need to learn something from the LGBT community about how to really pressure the government.
Yeah,
Like,
they got all
they're
these reporters
nonstop.
asking questions. Yeah, how come we don't have a bunch of questions about the marijuana stuff? I mean, that you should be getting hammered left and right about.
Well, I tell
that.
you what, though, like it drives me insane, but I've seen it in multiple articles from mainstream media in South Dakota this week where the headline reads, pot advocates, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, you are using a slang term to describe something. You're pot. Like, people hear that and they think it negatively. Like, why don't you call it what it is? Cannabis, marijuana. Like to me, you keep saying pot, like, and it's like this got this negative, inference on it. Like, you're saying it on purpose to delegitimize it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I remember them. They called me the pot petitioner for Public Utilities Commissioner, and I ran with it because it's like, yeah, that's exactly what I am.
That's a good slogan.
Yeah,
Pot petitioner for Public
Public
Utilities
Utilities Commissioner.
It has schools collect a written waiver that basically is, somebody writes down like what their reproductive biology is, and then the courts would look at that, or schools would keep that on file. Is that the appropriate role of government?
Well, I won't weigh in on what each individual school district may decide and what the court system process would be.
But that's what the bill said. You said you were excited to sign the bill. Do you think that is the appropriate role of government?
I think in regards to this piece of legislation, we're evaluating that and we'll move forward based on that evaluation that I put every bill through.
What kind of an answer was that? Oh my god,
That's
The
an
best
avoidance
non-answer
answer.
Yeah.
Dealing with industrial hemp, passed both the House and the Senate with a veto majority. I was wondering if you intend to veto that or sign it into law.
That decision hasn't been made yet.
Oh my God, she can't even make a decision on just signing the bill to legalize hemp, even though there's a veto-proof majority in Congress or the legislature. That's not. It's like, lady, what is your deal with marijuana? Like, why is she so against it? It's like doesn't have the majority of people behind her. It's actually this really small minority that she's pandering to with this strictness.
Governor Nome, there was there was a bill that passed out of both houses regarding an office of liaison for missing and murdered persons at the Attorney General's office. Do you plan on signing that bill?
We are looking at that bill too. We've had a lot of bills that have gone through the process that we're continuing to evaluate. Oh, is there anybody on the phone that has a question or comment? Go ahead, Lee.
I was wondering if you could talk a little bit more about sort of a lot of the one-time money that's being spent on some of these projects, and then as we're looking forward, it looks like the state of South Dakota is about to get like $1 billion more. Have there been any discussions about what to do with that money, and what do you see as the role of that new $1 billion?
We've been getting some feedback on what legislation might look like and how it impacts the state of South Dakota that would be coming through Congress. That's not finalized yet. And of course, the state has to comply with Treasury guidance. So we're not sure how that will impact the state yet. And we've asked the legislature to wait on making any decisions on what they think that could be utilized for. That bill is pretty broad and pretty complicated, and the impact on our state could be different based on whatever guidance Treasury does give us.
The thing is, if you
Yes.
pause it there,
Yeah.
this kind of gets into something a little different, but it's still the extra money concept. I read something earlier today, part of the last COVID deal, part of the 1.9 was 310 billion to schools or something, K through 12. And it's like, why was that money there? Most of the states didn't spend all of the money they got, the previous time. They still had money sitting in their treasuries that weren't spent. So why are we throwing another 300 at the schools? It's not necessary.
Yeah, and I just want to say that I still had to pay my property taxes throughout the whole COVID season, and that's where that property taxes is what goes to the schools. So Can I get a refund since they're going to get money from the federal government now? Or?
I mean, what's the added expense? Okay, maybe we had to buy a few extra computers. Maybe we had to put up some plastic barriers, but it's not billions upon hundreds of billions of dollars to do all that stuff. I mean, all you gotta do is hop on a bus and go.
Like South Dakota's regular annual budget, I think, is just over $1 billion. So we're getting basically our whole state budget for a year in this COVID relief, and it's just like, I mean, the last bill, the last relief, I think that went mostly to police officers for some reason.
Yeah, I don't know.
Law enforcement, and it was just like, okay.
If we're getting an entire year's worth of tax revenues, how about we just don't tax us for a year?
Yeah, a tax-free year. That'd be amazing.
That's what I kind of heard about this new stimulus. I was listening to Ron Paul the other day, his podcast, and he was going over the stimulus, and he said that a lot of the money included in the stimulus was to like bail out some of the states that did the hardest mandates, or they shut down the most, essentially, like New York, California, Texas.
Well, actually, I brought it up in my podcast, that California actually had higher revenues in 2020 than they did in 2019. That I got out of Reason Magazine. So why are we sending money to California when they made more money during a COVID year than they did pre-COVID? They don't need bailed out.
No. I guess they were talking about Texas, and they said Texas had done a lot less in tax revenue. Because if you shut down, and because Texas is like South Dakota, where it's non-income tax state, so a lot of their money comes from sales tax. And if people aren't out spending money, guess what? Revenues are down.
Well, yeah.
Since we're on this subject of the stimulus, I've got something I want to read real quick. There's like a fact check going around. Apparently, they fact checked people that were dividing the 1.9 trillion with the population of America to see how much each American would get if this just went to Americans' pockets, and it came out to like 5,750. Well, get this, dude. The fact checkers are coming out now and saying that is a misleading claim. That that math, just dividing 1.9 trillion by 370 million Americans. So basically, they're giving a literal 1984 2 + 2 = 5 fact check argument here by saying they don't know who's going to be. Let's see, this is misleading. Economists say that the cost of the plan cannot be attributed to every American in this way, though they differ on the specifics of what its impact would be. So here is the post that they're questioning. The COVID package cost every single American $5,750 and gives some people $1,400. Also, your children will be paying off this $1.9 trillion addition to our national debt after you and I are gone. And that's true, but they're saying it's not true because, let's see if I can get to it here. Let's see. Oh man, I can't find it. Basically, they were saying that they don't know who is going to be paying this off. Actually, you can't just say it's going to be our children. And it's like, who else is going to be paying this off? Yeah, this is a lot to go through. But here's the article. I'll put it up in our description if you want to read it. Or you could just post on Facebook that we're getting screwed over on the stimulus bill, and then they'll just fact check you, and you can read it there. But it's just insane how they're saying that math is misleading fact. It's like, what? All right, get this audio back up from Christy Nome.
From the law of the land. What is your approach, assuming that's going to happen before implementation here in the next few months?
Well, we're going to work as hard as we can to stand up a program that's responsible, that does what the voters wanted, and they wanted medical marijuana and a program to be available for folks that needed that kind of a program to participate in. The challenge is how it was written and some of the flaws in how it was written. So I am concerned about the homegrown provisions and how we move forward on that, and then also what happens to kids of all ages and their access to it, especially in the homegrown space.
In other
Yes.
words, you don't trust anybody to be a parent.
Right.
During legislature, as we pivot into the rest of the year, your work, the work of the legislature doesn't change. So what's ahead? What can we expect in the weeks?
You know what they really don't like about the homegrown aspect
The legislative
is because if they were allowed to delay and rewrite that law, they would have never allowed like flour to begin with. It would have been like oils or anything. They would have just made this completely restrictive, regulation, and it would have been like Iowa is like an oil only state. Like you can't, growing marijuana to her is complete off the rip.
Yeah.
legislative
As it should be.
I think it's great.
No tax money coming in if you grow it yourself.
Well, we're still dealing with
Mhm.
COVID-19 and getting.
You can't regulate
everybody
it. It's
back
all about
online,
regulation.
hopefully
They
back to
can't
normal
regulate
as soon
what
as
you're doing at your
possible.
house.
And we
That's what
also
it
are
boils
going to
down to.
continue to follow through on these projects that we passed bills for.
I mean, they can't.
We'll be spending a lot of time with the Department of Public Safety, Health, and Revenue on standing up the medical marijuana program and trying to do it the best we can to protect health, but also make that available like the voters wanted. So a lot of implementation on programs going forward. And then we're thankful for a little bit of moisture that we got. I was concerned that we were going to have a year full of drought, and I'm hopeful that we'll go into a good growing season and our farmers and ranchers will have a year where they can have a good crop and the ability to help our state continue to thrive economically. And we're very busy moving businesses to our state. I think one of the things we were just discussing was workforce. Training workforce is incredibly important going forward because we've got a lot of companies that are moving here and we need people trained with the skills that they need to fill those jobs.
Let the companies train them.
Yes.
Part
Yeah.
of the stimulus coming from Washington, part of the stipulations for that was that governors could not use those funds to cut taxes.
Mhm.
Would you consider not using those funds at all, or not receiving those funds based on that stipulation?
Yeah, we have to evaluate that. It was interesting to see that provision included. But obviously South Dakota has a low tax base anyways and a very friendly tax environment. But we'll look at how they give us the guidance on what that bill means and how those dollars can be utilized.
So that COVID money has a stipulation that the states that accept it can't lower their taxes.
Well, that sucks.
Yeah, that's man,
Yes.
it's sketchy.
There's got to be some subtle ways around that.
I don't know
Yeah.
yet, Bob. I mean, that's an honest truth. I don't know. And that's why we wanted time. We wanted time to look at what was happening in other states. There's no other state that has.
You've had 10 years to look at what was happening in other
Yeah.
states. Like
You
there should
should've
have
had
been plans on. Yeah, plans should have been made already.
Yeah, the
It's a-
plan
it's a-
should have been in. The plan should have been made before it was ever voted on, in case you did lose, Chrissy.
Mhm.
It's kind of amazing to think that California was the first to pass medical, and it was in 1996.
Yeah.
I mean, I was about 15 years old when that happened, and I remember thinking, "Oh, legalization's coming, man!" And to think that in 2021, it
25
hasn't
years
happened.
later.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like, but I am grateful that it seems to be on the cusp of finally happening.
Yeah, there's definitely a light at the end of the tunnel still.
Has stood up a medical marijuana program this fast before, except Oklahoma, and it's a mess.
Well, South Dakota should be leading the way and setting examples and setting it up fast enough and just like Why are
Rise-
we trying
rise
to
to the
be? What's up this
challenge.
pessimism? Yeah. Rise
Show
to the
us how it's
challenge.
done. Show us how it's done.
Yeah, Christy, you
You're
can
so
do
great.
presidential material.
Yeah, aren't you that take charge girl? Take down
Yeah.
prisoners.
Yeah, take
Get
charge
her-
and get it done the right
get her
way.
down. If that horse bucks you off, you get back up and you ride her.
Yeah. Grab that bull by the horns. That's what we do here in South Dakota.
Yeah.
Yeah, rodeo.
I wanted to
parade,
avoid that.
flag waving. Get it done, girl.
Get her done. Where's Larry the cable guy when we need him?
Responsibly to make sure we were being fair and to make sure the people who could utilize it for medical reasons could, but that we didn't jeopardize anybody else's health or our children to the risks that it poses for them. So
What risk and what is jeopardizing other people's health?
I
Like,
get
are
so
you
tired
kidding?
of politicians using children for everything.
Yeah.
So that's the challenge that I have in front of me now is how do we take IM26 and do it in a responsible manner and be fair? And that's why I wanted stakeholders to have time to weigh in.
Too late.
I mean, that's bullshit because she caved on delaying IM26 to prevent the decriminalization amendment. Like she was like, okay, if you guys get rid of this decriminalization amendment, I'll cave on delaying IM26. So she didn't care about delaying it because she's not ready. That's just a bunch of bullcrap. The reason why, like when we had Emmett Reisstraffer on, he basically elaborated to us why she wanted to delay it is because she wanted to have a committee that would change everything and that the governor would appoint everybody on that or half of the people on that committee. So, but that thankfully fell through when the legislator couldn't agree on a compromise.
Just once, I wish that sign language lady would do this whole thing.
Yeah, that'd be great.
And a doctor can write a prescription to somebody who
crazy.
wants it for a treatment such as anxiety or anorexia or bulimia, and they'll be able to grow 1,000
Totally.
plants at home. And so that's the challenge is the amount of, conditions that it can be prescribed for. Once a doctor writes that prescription, an unlimited amount of plants can be grown at home.
Who cares?
How do we contain that and not
You still
make
can
sure
only
that it's being
possess
utilized
3
for different
ounces,
purposes?
so
The free market will contain it by limiting by the limit of how much space everybody has in their house. Like you can't just grow 1,000 plants in your house.
Exactly.
And if you're using it for your personal use, why would you grow 1,000 plants?
So going forward, how do you continue to go back to the legislature and ask every year for another appropriation to pay for the enforcement and the regulation?
We're continuing to look at that. It will cost the state money to stand up this program. There was some dollars appropriated for it this session to get started on that path, and we'll have to evaluate how much it will continue to cost taxpayers.
And she tries to pin it off that her regulations that she's trying to push is going to cost taxpayers money. And that's the supporters of this bill's fault. Like, no, you trying to regulate this and be like a psycho tyrant is the reason why it's costing taxpayers more money. If you would just let people grow plants in their house and just let people buy and sell weed freely, there would be no need for regulations. Like, what are you trying to regulate?
minding your business costs $0.
Yeah. Yeah.
Precisely.
Governor Nome, this is Jody at DRG Media Group in Pierre.
Yes, go ahead, Jody.
The proposed merger of the Ag and Environment and Natural Resources Department is moving forward. So what are next steps for those two agencies and getting this merger completed?
Base is heavy on that
Just
car.
streamlining programs and continuing operating like they do, but having more communication between the agencies because they'll be in the same building and working together each and every day. So Obviously we have Secretary Hunter Roberts that will be heading that up. We also have the Lieutenant Governor Larry Roden, who is the ambassador for agriculture in the state, and they'll be heavily involved in making sure that that merger not only continues to protect our water quality and our environment, but also creates a one-stop shop for ag producers in the state. Jonathan? Sure.
Anybody else have a question?
I think they're
Yeah, I
good.
know a lot of people didn't like that idea of those two departments merging, but on its face value, it looks like it's just, decreasing the size of government essentially, because you're getting rid of, you're kind of merging two departments into one,
Yeah,
say
I myself wasn't a fan of it, but I don't know enough about it to go into great detail. I just think sometimes they're at conflict with each other, and it's a good idea not to merge them.
So if anybody out there is listening and they want to come on in a couple weeks and explain to us why that was a bad deal, please do.
Good.
I have a couple of times.
Any thoughts on what's going on with your colleague there in New York?
No, I just, it's interesting to watch what he did with nursing homes. I think it's a tragedy what happened there and the policies he followed. And I do think the investigation is warranted.
Governor, one more question.
Sure.
Have you heard from any businesses, the NCAA at all, or something about pulling out any kind of tournaments or activities?
I've heard from individuals, not businesses, and not in particular from the NCAA. Austin?
Yes, ma'am. You talked about this a little bit in the beginning, but obviously with this session, we just had an unprecedented number of dollars available from, of course, the federal stimulus. You touched on some of the highlights, but if I could just get you to talk a little bit more about maybe how you thought it went overall, trying to spend those dollars about this session.
Well, the budget's not done, so I'll be able to talk better when it's completed. I hate to put us in a position where something changes today and then I misspoke, but
I think it's dangerous that we give governors $1 billion in South Dakota to use at their own discretion. I think it's more appropriate that the legislator handles how money is spent, even if it's given to us by the federal government. She basically has, she basically has just as much power as the legislator now. They both have $1 billion to work with. And I feel that her appointing the money to, she's demonstrating clear favoritism with where the money is going. Like I said, some of the money went to law enforcement. Some of it went to her own family's businesses. That's basically, in my opinion, kind of like buying votes by you handing out COVID money to everybody, and you have sole discretion on where that money goes.
You could buy influence for sure.
Yeah, $1 billion goes a hell of a long way in South Dakota. There's not even 1 million residents here, so should I do that math, or am I gonna get fact checked too?
I was proud of the legislature that they're willing to put more money into trust funds and that they recognize the need to put money into reserves as well, not really knowing what the economy will look like in the next 2 or 3 years going forward. To have that kind of reserve in place will be helpful stabilizing our state government and the services that we provide. They also invested heavily in infrastructure, getting high-speed broadband access to.
What's that, Greg? Missed that.
I said, why is that state seal so tiny behind her?
Yeah. Can we invest a little bit more in our banners or something? I don't know.
I mean, yeah, it's why wouldn't that just be at least 3 or 4 times the size of what it is? You can't even see what it is.
No, you can't. I saw that too earlier and noticed it, but I didn't say anything.
Cade Hill says, awesome show, guys. Thank you. Appreciate it. Make sure to like our page if you are following, or follow us on Twitter and Facebook and all that.
Us to the entire state was a priority of mine. I was glad to see that funded. They're investing in some railroad, which will be very helpful for us in moving commodities across the state of South Dakota. And also the DEX building, radio towers, public safety. All of those are long-term benefits that I think are wise investments considering what was going forward. And then paying down bonds for our technical schools was something that was important as well. And we invested in our kids, getting that Freedom Scholarship set up was a big deal, and that will be there permanently for kids that don't
I don't know. I question if there's actually freedom involved in the scholarship, if the government is labeling it the Freedom Scholarship. It's usually the opposite of what they name it is the true intention, but who knows?
have the financial means to go to get a higher education, and then also investing in some special projects and programs at our four-year universities is incredibly important as well. So glad to see some of those moving forward in the final days.
Real quick, getting back to the IM26 again, I apologize, but
Why are you apologizing?
Essentially would put most of IM26 into effect July 1st anyways. I think Speaker Gosh brought it. I'd seen memos that your office was circulating that compromise. So I guess what's different about
we had helped work on that compromise, and that was something that would have put us in a better spot today if they had adopted it. It took out the homegrown provisions. It gave us a little bit, it set it up on time, like the voters had voted on the fall ballot, but it also gave the Department of Health the ability to write the rules without the stakeholder and legislative input, which would speed it up and allow us to do that quicker. That was not adopted, and so therefore we're back to IM26 the way it was on the ballot.
Is your main concern, I guess, the homegrown provision?
It is, and then just the lack of control around our kids having.
What's that?
I just think it's kind of beautiful that all of her political games that she tried to play, didn't work.
I like how that guy basically asked her about giving up the delay as a compromise, and she totally didn't even respond to that aspect of the question at all. It's like, come on, Christy. We see right through you.
Having access to it. That homegrown provision has been extremely problematic from the beginning. And
problematic to you.
Certainly understand
the thing is, it's not problematic if you have recreational marijuana, which the voters passed.
Yeah.
The problem is that she's worried, and rightly probably fucking so, pardon my French, but there's probably going to be quite a few people that end up growing weed and then selling it on the black market through this measure. But all of that's unnecessary if they had allowed Amendment A to go through as planned, because then it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Wanting to have a medical marijuana program, just I want to do it responsibly.
Do you have any plans to appoint on your own a committee or a group to look into the questions that IM26 didn't address?
I don't. What was interesting to me was at the beginning of session, many legislators were coming to us asking for us for a delay. They wanted to have more input. They recognized that there needed to be some challenges. So we were not the only ones who wanted to have some provisions, and there was a lot of debate throughout session on what changes would be acceptable and which ones wouldn't be. A lot of people invested a lot of time into it. We're at the end of session. There are no changes as of today. That doesn't mean that someone might not come back and have an idea to deal with later on.
Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, so that was that.
Yay.
Any final thoughts on what we just witnessed? I would just say I'm disappointed there was no Roundsburg questions asked. I think it would have been appropriate to ask her if she was going to release more information or what she thought about not being able to release more information from that judge. There's another thing I was hoping she would be asked, but I can't remember what it was at the moment. But yeah, any final thoughts from you guys before we close out the show?
Yeah, I'm okay, I think.
I just want to encourage everyone to come on out to the Libertarian Party of South Dakota State Convention next Saturday, 2 p.m. at the Clubhouse.
Clubhouse
Caryn
Hotel and
Harlos,
Suites.
Speaker, she was on tonight. There was something else I was going to say.
We have our executive committee elections coming up at the convention. So,
So speaking of the XCOM elections, so next Sunday for the podcast, Daryl, you're invited back on if you'd like. But Devin's running for chair. I'm probably running for something. So what we'd like to do next Sunday, if possible, is anybody that gets elected to the executive committee, we would like to invite on the podcast next Sunday. And we were going to do like kind of a
Good idea.
roundtable LPSD discussion. And so anybody that gets elected next week, you got an open invitation to come on next Sunday.
Yeah, and Hedgehog Watchdog did write a little guide here. Greg wrote that. Awesome job. I don't know if should we go through it real quick
Go ahead.
Basically, the convention is going to be at the Clubhouse Hotel and Suites. That's on Louise Avenue in Sioux Falls. What else here? It starts at 2, but Minnehaha County is going to be using the space to elect a county party chair and treasurer and secretary. That's going to start at 1. So if you're in Minnehaha County, highly encourage you to come at 1 o'clock and elect a county affiliate there. So yeah, there's a local affiliate running in Minnehaha. I don't know that we have any county affiliates right now. So it'd be great to get one on the board.
The county CJ's still got his up there, I think.
Yeah. Got 1. So we could have 2 on the board, I guess. We're going to have several speakers. Greg was mentioning Caryn Ann Harlos, who was just on. She's going to be our keynote speaker with Christopher Thrasher. Christopher Thrasher is, what's the, here it says down here. He's the executive director of Voice for America. So that should be a good subject. We also have some local speakers. We're going to have Emmett Reistroffer back. He'll be speaking for the initiative measure to recall elected state officials. So that should be good. I think that's a popular subject right now, considering everything that went on the last year or so. I think if that was in effect now, that Attorney General Ravnsborg would have already been recalled.
Yeah,
I think that would happen rather quickly. We also have Lisa Marie Nolan. She's a former chair of Minnehaha County. She'll be speaking for the Americans for Prosperity, and she's going to give us a review of the legislative session that just happened. So that should be good. And then possibly going to have a speaker for ranked choice voting in South Dakota. And if we don't have
did you guys talk to Corrigan at all about that when he was on your show? I missed the beginning of that one.
I think we talked about, we think
about what?
The ranked choice voting. I'm pretty sure we did, and I think we talked about the gerrymandering. There's going to be another petition to help curb gerrymandering, but I'm not 100% convinced that it actually would do that. But
they've been that new organization in South Dakota, the ranked choice voting, that just started up.
Because
they have weekly meetings on Tuesday, so if anybody wants to get involved or learn about it, they have weekly.
Yeah,
because I've been thinking about that ranked choice voting, and I haven't looked into it enough. But I kind of question whether that would be seen as constitutional or not. Because what you're doing after the first round, you're taking votes for the bottom guy away and switching over to their second choice, which is kind of altering choices. And, it's altering votes. Plus, the other thing I see too with that is, say, some voters choice rank all the candidates and another person just only votes for one person. Now, all of a sudden, you're kind of dealing with the issue of one person equals one vote, and the equality issue of that. And I kind of was in contact with Corrigan. At this point, I'm not planning on having guests on my podcast, but I've asked him if he'd be willing to do it sometime if I do. So I'm gonna be talking with him about that possibility at the convention.
Yeah, he's definitely a good guest. I think the gist of it is they're trying to set up a committee with like 9 people, and then it would be 3 people from the Democrats and 3 from the Republicans, and 3 independents. So I didn't see any mention of libertarians in it. So if they're gonna exclude libertarians from this committee, I think that's literally part of the problem that we have now. So I'm definitely not going to support it unless libertarians are going to be on this committee too. And Like, I think it's bullcrap, even if it's just one person, since I know we're the smallest. But then again, why would the Democrats get 3 and Republicans get 3 if we're not going to get 3 too? I mean, if it's about equality,
which it should be.
But yeah, as Greg was mentioning, or I guess I was mentioning, that we're going to have a new executive committee elected at this convention on Saturday. There's a high probability of a bylaw change proposal to eliminate the 3 at-large positions. And then you have to be registered to vote as Libertarian before you show, or actually you can probably register right there at the convention too. And then to vote. And then we'll have registration forms available for everybody. It's free to join, free to register. It's a voluntary $10 a year membership fee, but that's just voluntary. And then obviously the lifetime membership, if you want bragging rights, is $250. But yeah, should be a good time.
I was gonna do that for a convention. I don't think I'm gonna be able to,
but yeah, if you oh yeah, I was gonna mention one more thing too. Libertarian Party of South Dakota did secure a booth for Freedom Fest in July, and when so we'll be there. We also got, as Greg mentioned earlier, $100 off for your ticket to Freedom Fest. So I think it's $400 right now. So you'd get them for $300, and then all you have to do is message the party page, and you'll get a code that you can put in on their Freedom Fest website to get your discount. And we'll also probably just have the code out at the convention. So like everybody should, if you want to get the Freedom Fest for a discount, definitely hit up the party page. And I think we're gonna have a good time. We should have a big turnout of Libertarians there to, because I know Kristi Noem will be there. So if you want to, get a chance to speak to her, I know that Justin Amash and Joejorgensen will also be attending. So if you want to meet them, I think you mentioned that Judge Napolitanto. Is that how you pronounce it?
Napolitanto.
Yeah,
Napolitanto, yeah.
He usually goes, and then another kind of big Libertarian that usually goes is John Stossel, who I kind of like.
Oh yeah, that guy's awesome. He moderated one of the debates for the presidential candidates. That was so good.
I'd love to see Drew Carey show up at something like that.
Yeah, that'd be cool. That'd be cool. But so yeah, if you want to hang out and like meet some like big name Libertarians, this is the event to go to.
Yeah. Maybe we could like get a big Airbnb for everybody, and like all the Libertarians that are gonna go like pitch in, and then we all rent out this big mansion in Rapid City somewhere to hang out. I think that'd be fun. But yeah, if you like the show, be sure to subscribe to us on YouTube, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter at Hedgehog Watchdog. That's where we put out a lot of blog articles. And we're also proud members of the Free Speech Media Network. You can catch them on Facebook, also on trovo.live/Free Speech Media. Do you guys have any final words before we cut out?
Yeah, we just need to make that black and white cat of yours the LPSD mascot. It's always looking for screen time.
That's what gets all the views on the show.
See you later, guys.
Yeah, so see you. We'll be live next Sunday at 7 p.m. We're gonna try to get as many new executive committee members on. Do you have like a, what do you call it, Greg? Like a circle?
Maybe we can get a short live broadcast on Saturday night, huh?
I'm down. I'm down to go live. I know I'm going to try to stream the convention live on Hedgehog Watchdog.
Yeah.
So maybe if we take a recess, we can like do like a little mini show about what's happened so far. And I don't know. We'll wing it. We'll figure it out.
All right. Thanks for tuning in.
Well, yeah. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next Saturday possibly next Saturday. Definitely next Sunday at 7 p.m. Thanks for, Peace. you.